few days ago. Obviously, that.
NPR News in Washington. I'm Corva Coleman. Confirmation hearings are underway in some Senate committees this morning for some of President-elect Trump's cabinet choices. That includes Pam Bondi, Trump's pick for the next U.S. Attorney General. Trump has said that he wants to end the, quote, weaponization of the Justice Department. Bondi agrees, saying she would bring an end to partisanship at the agency.
If confirmed as the next Attorney General of the United States, my overriding objective will be to return the Department of Justice to its core mission of keeping Americans safe and vigorously prosecuting criminals.
Federal charges against Trump of election interference, mishandling classified documents, and obstructing justice were dropped after he won the election. Trump denies the charges. Other Trump nominees in confirmation hearings today include Florida Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, former Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy to run the Transportation Department, and former fossil fuel executive Chris Wright to head the Energy Department. Trump's incoming national security advisor, Mike Waltz, says the southern border is the most immediate national security challenge for the U.S. NPR's Asma Khalid reports his comments came during a symbolic event to pass the baton from Biden's national security advisor to Trump's.
Waltz said the, quote, open nature of the southern border is unacceptable, and the incoming Trump administration intends to tackle that.
You're going to see a lot of action to close the border, to go back to the policies that we believe were working.
He pointed to ideas like remain in Mexico or working with the Mexican government to fortify their southern border. Waltz and Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, have routinely been in communication throughout this transition period, the two teams working to try to get a hostage deal that would lead to a ceasefire in Gaza. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
Weather forecasters are warning of high winds in Los Angeles later this morning. At least 25 people have been killed by the L.A. firestorm since last week. NPR's Martin Costi reports from L.A. Fire crews and regional officials are struggling to cope.
The two big fires, Palisades and Eaton, have destroyed or damaged thousands of homes, putting a huge strain on the Los Angeles housing market. Mayor Karen Bass has issued an emergency order, which she says she hopes will free up 1,200 housing units in the next week or so. But she and other local leaders are also calling on landlords not to jack up prices.
The rents are too expensive to begin with. And the idea that somebody would gouge folks at this point in time, I think is shameful.
State law prohibits increases of more than 10% during declared emergencies such as this, but that has not stopped bidding wars over some available housing. Martin Costi, NPR News, Los Angeles.
This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. State agriculture officials are asking farmers to complete a survey this week on weather-related damage sustained over the past 2 years. That's in order to tap newly available federal assistance. We have more from New England Public Media's Adam Frenier.
A spending bill passed by Congress late last year provides $220 million to 8 states, including all of New England. And the survey will help to determine just how much Massachusetts will see. Wynton Pickoff is with the state's Department of Agricultural Resources. He says the money will cover more than just crop losses sustained by farmers.
If there's been any infrastructure loss, like the floods really exacerbated any leaking or actually damaged any buildings, all those kinds of things would be eligible.
In 2023 and 2024, severe flooding and ill-timed frost and a drought impacted growers, causing significant loss of crops and contaminated soil, leaving some fields unusable. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Adam Frenier.
Boston Mayor Michelle Wu and her new daughter Mira are back home after being discharged from Brigham and Women's Hospital at 4 p.m. yesterday. A source close to the mayor says Wu was home recovering yesterday evening and had been in touch with her team at City Hall. Congratulations and well wishes from Wu and her family poured in from friends and supporters yesterday, including from Boston Public Radio's Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. Me Too. Even New England Patriots Foundation President Josh Kraft posted a congratulatory note on LinkedIn. There are rumors that Kraft is thinking about running against the mayor as she runs for another term. 27 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A little heads up, tomorrow going to be joined by Chuck Todd, Andrew Cabral, the former sheriff of Suffolk County, Bill McKibben, who's going to tell us everything we need to know about the California fires and what it means for the state's future and ours in terms of climate change. Going to be back here on Friday with live music, as well as State Auditor Diana DiZoglio, who keeps trying to audit the legislature, and we keep hoping that she may actually get to do it.
And has support of 72% of the people on the ballot to audit the legislature. How you doing, Marjorie?
Hi, Jim.
Good. So on Monday, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu gave birth to her third child, a healthy baby girl named Mira. Boston Globe headlined that day referencing Wu was not a birth announcement. It related to the mayor's efforts to provide tax relief for homeowners. As a city councilor, Wu filed the city's first ordinance on paid parental leave back in 2015, a political priority for her to make sure women have the ability to recover and spend time with their newborns if they choose. But when it comes to the mayor herself, as you know, Wu is not taking a formal maternity leave. She's taking a, quote, working leave, as she calls it. So our lines are open at 877-301-8970 for a call or a text. Is she making it more difficult for other working women to just say no to working right after giving birth, or is she actually proving the model? Women should, of course, be able to make their own decisions about whether they're going to go to work or not after having a kid. And more broadly, beyond just Mayor Wu, does the rise of women in leadership positions cause bias against particularly young mothers in positions of power to dissipate? Our number is 877-301-8970. What's your take on this?
Well, you know, I think it normalizes it and shows the ability of women to be having big jobs when their kids are small. I mean, Wu has extenuating circumstances that really help. She's got a stay-at-home husband who is in charge of the kids. This is her third kid, so the drill is down. She
also has a staff of, what, thousands of people,
and
hundreds of people?
And it also has to do a lot with her health and the baby's health. If you're bouncing back and you're healthy, I mean, giving birth is a big deal. It takes a while to recover. You're often tired and exhausted. But I think the big transition is the first kid, you know, when you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be up all night long. I just think it's great that she's joining these. I thought this had never happened before in America. I was wrong. There are other people that have done this, Congress people and mayors around the country. But what they've done is the same thing that she's done. They may or may not have taken some time off, but they've given birth and gone back to work shortly after giving birth and managed the cities that they're in, like Stamford, Connecticut, and San Bernardino, California.
There's an interesting story, though, about that. The one congresswoman, she's not the only one, who gave birth while in office. What she's trying to do, which is a variation on what options for people who've just given birth, is allow remote voting, which is not allowed.
Yep.
So a person can work while staying home for a bit with their kid. And of course, the leadership in the legislature and the Congress has not said yes to that yet.
Well, they should. She's from Colorado, by the way.
What's that?
She's from Colorado. So that's a long way to go to vote when you can do it remotely
I
instead.
agree. Even more reason to be accommodating, which they are not. The thing about Wu is, one, I think she's done both things perfectly. One, she's responsible for the ordinance to begin with. She was the chief sponsor when she was a city councilor. Secondly, she's making a choice, and admittedly, as you said a minute ago, she has the resources. I don't mean just money, but, as you say, a stay-at-home husband,
right.
Big staff, that sort of thing. So it's different, but showing that you can make a choice, but you have an option. If you want to take parental leave as a municipal worker, you can. My fear is that employers who are not as enlightened as most employers should be may use the Wu model to suggest, hey, if she can do it with a much tougher job than you have, whoever you are, then you can come to work right after you give birth too. I don't know. I hope it doesn't have that effect, but I fear it does. Here's what we asked her, by the way, in August, why she wouldn't be taking a maternity leave when she was on the show for her third child, the one that was born the day before her birthday the other day, even though she's a big proponent of paid parental leave. Here's what Mayor Wu told us.
I think everyone has to make their own decision. In my role, there is no such thing as delegating the job and just taking off weeks at a time. Even when I'm on vacation, technically with my family or out of the city, I am on call 24/7. And when a decision needs to be made, I make it. And certainly I will adjust how I do the job. I won't be on my feet as much. I'll probably be working from home a little bit more, but I'll be in touch with my team.
And by the way, she won't be with us in January. The office notified us for this obvious reason. She's going to skip January. She'll be back with us in February. I wish I had said, she made a point that should have been part of our intro too, is she doesn't have much choice but to work. There's no vice mayor. There's no number two. There's nothing, as far as I know, in the city charter that said if the mayor is unable to perform or chooses not to perform her duties for a limited period of time, what happens, obviously, if she were to step down, which no one is talking about, of course, the city council president would step up, as has happened in the past with people, as we know, like Tom Menino. But we want to know what your sense is. What kind of statement does this make? Does it trickle down onto other young mothers? Do you think Mayor Wu is doing the right thing? Again, the number is 877-301-8970.
Well, it seems to me it's like you want the option there. You want it. To me, you should get 4 months off, particularly for your first kid, at least 4 months off, and it should be paid.
What do you get in the city? What is it, 12 weeks? Or
12 weeks.
Is it 12 weeks?
Yes, and she was involved in that in 2015. I think Marty Walsh is the one that finalized the paid.
No, he signed it, but she sponsored.
Yeah,
she's the chief sponsor.
Because she used to bring her older boys to city council meetings and nurse the kids there and stuff like that. Like I said, I love this because it normalizes. What it says is, in the year of the alpha male, which we're going to be talking about later on the Trump presidency, this shows that there's some pretty alpha females out there too, right? Women that can give birth, which is a big physical thing, nurse a baby, which is a big physical thing, and still do their job. It sets a great example. Doesn't mean everybody should do it or can do it, but it just shows that it can be done, and that's what I really like about it.
Do you not think let's assume in a typical workplace, a woman is giving birth next month in Boston. Do you think there's more pressure, either self-imposed or employer-imposed, for her to take at least less time off than she might otherwise take? Because of what Michelle Wu was able to do?
We'll see what people think and what the situations are at their job, but I think very few people are mayors of their cities and their female mayors who are giving birth. So I don't think her situation, I think her situation is very different. You don't? Okay.
I don't think people are going to say, there are only 3 women mayors who have given birth while in office. She's the mayor of this city. She's a major figure, not just here. She's a major American. We have Bill McKibben on. Bill McKibben thinks she's the best environmental mayor in America.
I know.
So she is not just a local figure. So I think there is impact. I'm not sure. I have no idea what the impact is going to be, but I think there is impact.
Well, I suppose part of you might think, gee, I couldn't do this. I was a basket case. The mayor of Scranton, Pennsylvania, this Paige Cognetti, is pretty funny. She delivered her first child 2 weeks before she was going to be sworn in. Now, she'd never had a kid before. She delivered the kid, and she was totally exhausted. She said, for the first 2 weeks, was she the one that said for the first 2 weeks you don't know where you are or what country you're in or something like that? That might have been somebody else that said. Actually, that was the woman from Colorado that said that. But she did say, this woman, the mayor of Scranton, Pennsylvania, because she had 2 kids while she was in office, that there was a cost, she thought, in not putting her family first in those early moments. So she did feel bad about it, that she wasn't able to give.
She thought there was a cost, or people were saying about her?
She said she thought there was a cost. And I think a lot of people feel that, especially with your first kid. You're feeling very torn going back to work.
Marjorie, you're the most guilt-ridden person I've ever met in my life.
I was crying every day.
You've had 3 kids.
Yes, I have.
If you had a kid a month after Mayor Wu did what she did, don't tell me you wouldn't have said to yourself at home at night while you're lying in bed, maybe I should go back to the Herald more quickly. I know you pretty well. You don't think you would have felt that pressure?
I would have thought,
even if the boss was great about it.
Yeah, how come she can do it and I can't do it?
Exactly.
I thought I should be able to do it. But I think that's the thing. Everybody is different, as the mayor said. But again, this to me is just seeing this woman in Scranton, Pennsylvania, this Paige Cognetti, this U.S. Representative Brittany Patterson out in Colorado doing it. These other people. Remember, you had a crush on her.
Who?
The Prime Minister of Australia. Ahern.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Jacinda Ardern.
Yeah, I mean, she
had
did
a
it.
kid while she was in office.
She did, and she brought that kid into City Hall. I mean, I think.
By the way, my younger daughter bumped into her at the coffee shop at the end of our street a couple of months ago. She's in Cambridge. She's doing some Harvard stuff. We tried to get her on unsuccessfully. She is a really impressive. She was there through the Christchurch thing and all those kinds of things. She's amazing.
We did have the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That would be Jane Swift, who had 3 children. I think she had 3 under 3 at one time, which is impossible. But the thing that made things really impossible for Jane Swift, she's a 6-hour commute. She was going out to the western part of the state. I don't think you can do it with a 6-hour commute. That's very, very difficult. But I guess...
Wait, stay on her. I know it was a long time ago, but as I've said before, to my recollection, every single columnist at the Globe and the Herald trashed her for the helicopter with one exception. Who is the one exception?
Well, that I would have been the exception, because if I put myself in her shoes and my first child had a very high fever and I was 3 hours away from that
get
kid,
on the helicopter.
and I knew a state cop could get me back in a half an hour, I would have done it and then taken the flak after it. So I was with her when she did that. But I guess what I'm saying is, you look for examples of progress. We still don't have help with childcare. We still don't have maternity leaves like they should be at a lot of places. This is progress in the sense that women are showing that they can manage these things. They can multitask. They can do the kids. And by the way, as every parent knows, you can hire people or have relatives help you when the kids are little. Where the kids really need you is when they're older.
Yeah, you can hire people if you can afford to hire people.
Yeah, or you have your family. You have your family members. You can't hire someone to do your kids' homework with them or to go to the basketball games and watch them perform at the school plays.
Before we get to the calls, let me read a couple of texts. And one, Peter from Mystic, with all due respect, in Connecticut, either I misspoke or you got me wrong. Women should be able to plan their families and decide how to raise their kids with their spouses. This is not an issue for anyone but the mayor and her family, no matter how hard you try to make it. We're not talking about the mayor. The mayor made her decision. We respect it. She should have the choice. We're talking about what impact that has, if any, on other young mothers who are not high-profile people, who have a stay-at-home husband, etc. And Anonymous says the following. Well, you read it.
Well, I would love to be able to go back to working from home right after giving birth. I'm with Jim. It puts undue expectations on those of us who don't have the resources to do so.
Let's take some calls. 877-301-8970. Julia in Arlington. Hi there.
Hi, how are you today?
Excellent, thanks.
So my call has to do with, first of all, anyone should make their own choice. That's the first pass.
If they can.
Secondly, well, if they can, of course, but we need to enable everybody making their own choice.
Agreed.
Secondly, regardless of whether it's your first, second, third, or fifth kid, you don't know how that delivery is going to go.
Right.
And it's imperative to be able to heal afterwards and, be able to take care of your baby. And so my personal experience is with my first baby, I got a proper leave of 3 months that I turned into 5 because of switching jobs. With my second baby, I only had 6 weeks. It took me 3 years to fully heal and be pain-free.
Wow.
And I think that's something that's being ignored here, that not every delivery is the same.
I'm really glad you made that point,
Well,
Julia.
health is a big thing. Health is a big thing,
Thanks
Julia.
for the
You're
call.
absolutely right. If you have a C-section, it's obviously harder to be bouncing back. Or if there are health issues with the baby, we said that at the beginning. If it's a healthy mom, healthy baby, is different than if there's some health issues there. But there is the issue of being exhausted. I think everybody's exhausted, and I think that makes it really kind of hard.
Did you have paid leave when your first kid is almost 40? How old?
And my first daughter's almost 40, yeah.
Okay, so did you have paid leave?
No.
You
No,
didn't.
you had disability from the state of Massachusetts.
So you got a percentage of your salary.
I think you got 6 weeks. You were disabled. That was what they
I
said
know.
to you back then. You were disabled. And I think they gave you 6 weeks, which is really hard. 6 weeks is not enough. Anyway, Andy from Waltham, thank you for calling.
Hi, Andy. Hi. You're on.
Hi, I'm sorry I didn't answer. I was on.
That's okay.
Hi.
Welcome. Good to have you. What's up?
Thank you. Being a mother of 3, I went to work very quickly after my third because I was going crazy. But in retrospect, I regret that. I regret a lot of stuff that I put my work in front of my children.
Yeah.
And I understand, the mayor, but it just makes me very sad. She should put that kid in a bottle and her husband should be feeding the baby. I don't want her to see. You can't feed a baby and focus on what's being said, and someone, or whatever the meeting is, you can't do them both. Why do women, younger women, feel they can multitask? Why would you want to?
Well, by the way, with all due respect, Andy, I surely don't want to speak for Mayor Wu. I think if she was here, she's a pretty honest person. I think she would say, I'm probably not working as many hours as I was before. I'm not going to be nursing my kid while running a cabinet meeting of the mayor's office. I think what she's saying, is I can do the job adequately and well, maybe with not the same number of insane hours, while I'm stay at home for a few weeks at least. Mother, that doesn't work for you either?
What would her peeps say?
What would her who say?
Peeps? Who? Who are they?
Her people say.
I don't know.
I don't know. Who voted for her? Would her voters say, wait a minute, I think when they're used to working for her a lot, I'm sure her staff are thrilled that their hours aren't going to be as intense.
Well, I would say, no, Andy, you and I are on a different wavelength. I would say their hours are going to be more intense because there's some things she's just not going to be able to do where some gaps are going to have to be filled. I understand your position, and we respect it, and thank you. I just disagree with it. Andy, thanks for the call.
I should say part of how I feel about this and how this is normalizing it and show that women, not every woman, but how women can do this. And Michelle Wu is obviously a very smart woman and very organized and very accomplished. I was working at Boston Magazine when I had my first kid.
Oh, I thought you were at the Herald.
No, and I remember the boss actually coming in and saying to me, thanks a lot. We've really enjoyed you being here, and good luck. And I said, wait a minute.
And you're not coming back? Was the implication?
Because I was the first woman who'd had a child.
Is that true?
And come back there, and they just assumed I was leaving. So what I guess I'm excited about is, I was just a magazine writer. I wasn't running anything, and I think that's what I'm excited about, the idea that all these women that are politicians, that are leaders, or in Hearn's case, Prime Minister of New Zealand, that they did it so effectively, and they were very popular with their voters. Not everybody can, not everybody should, but it's great to see that some people can, and they'll be accepted for it.
By the way, before we take a break, one of you posted Jacinda Ardern was Prime Minister of New Zealand. What did I say?
What is she? Australia? Maybe
no,
I said Australia.
Did I say?
I might have gotten it wrong the
apologies.
first time.
Of
Sorry.
course, she was Prime Minister of New Zealand. We got to take a break.
Okay, we're talking about we're not really talking about Mayor Wu. She's just giving us an excuse to talk about this. The idea of women going right back to work after they have news.
When you ride the bullet train in Japan, you hear something like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Shinkansen.
Who that voice belongs to, though, is not the obvious choice.
I'm Australian, mimicking a Canadian who was mimicking a British woman who was the original voice on the Shinkansen.
The voice of Japan's Shinkansen, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have any unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Comcast, offering Xfinity Mobile, featuring data options that include streaming, browsing, and texting. More information is available at xfinity.com/mobile.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, Chuck Todd, Andrew Cabral, Bill McKibben. And on Friday, live music, as we always have, plus State Auditor Diana DiZoglio to talk about her ballot question, which got a mere 72% of the vote, and the legislature continues to resist. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Mayor Wu's decision not to take extended time off, in fact, virtually no time off, after the birth of her kid, and what the impact is, if any, on other young mothers who are just giving birth. 877-301-8970. I just want to say one thing. We'll talk to Sue about this. Pam Bondi, who is nominated to be the Attorney General after Gates pulled out, is now testifying. Mm-hmm. She used to be an election denier. She now accepts, of course, the results of the 2020 election. And she went on to say, according to CNN, that there was a peaceful transition of power. in 2020. That bodes well, don't you think?
It's very disturbing because she's going to do whatever Donald Trump tells her to do. There won't be any independence in the Department of Justice, which is really too bad, but the whole situation is kind of too bad. But listen to this from Ingrid in Somerville. I think we need not make assumptions and give Wu more credit. She's already got 2 little boys that probably drive her crazy. Now she's got a perfect little angel to cuddle with. She'll do great. She's clearly not average. We have heard her play the piano.
877-301-8970. Walter in Swampscott, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, folks.
Hey.
Thought I'd just call in and give 2 cents from a father's perspective.
Sure.
On our first daughter, my wife was at a management level in the high-tech industry, so she decided to go back to work after 3 days.
3 days?
I got assigned 3 days. 3 days she went back to work. She's a tough cookie.
Wow.
So I got assigned to stay home and bring up our daughter. Christine would pump, and I'd have the bottles and all that stuff. After a month, I explained to her that I'm having postpartum distress here. So anyways, we soldiered on, and at the current time, I feel I have an incredible connection with my daughter, far beyond what most fathers have with their daughters.
Because of that, Walter, you mean because of that time?
Because of that time with her,
That's great.
I actually was a stay-home dad until Vanessa was almost 4 years old, and I was able to teach her how to climb a tree, ride a bike, ice skate, and so if Mom wants to go back to work, fine. Next pregnancy, I want twin sons.
Walter, thanks for your
That was a great
perspective.
call.
We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Here's one from Tommy in Southie.
This should be
It's not
good.
very nice, but I'm going to read it anyway.
Oh, of course you are.
I am sure if Turnip Top can run the country in his slippers from the golf course, that our mayor can run Boston as a mother raising a new baby.
Well, I don't think that's an illegitimate point of view. Do you?
No, I think that's true.
Francis in South Dartmouth, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, thank you.
I'm a 75-year-old former television producer of 30 years, and I just think the whole women's movement was about giving men and women alike choice without judgment.
That's right. That's right. So
the problem, though, Francis,
why should anybody weigh in on what you choose?
Well, first of all, we're not weighing in on Wu's choice at all. I think there's some callers.
No, I don't mean you. I just mean the world.
Yeah, but when you say, and I hope everybody would agree with you, there should be choice. The problem is choice depends upon the infrastructure and resources to be able to make a choice, And as Marjorie said a minute ago, our society is not terribly young mother friendly, unlike most of the rest of the Western world. So in principle, I think we all agree, but in practice, it's pretty tough nut to crack. Don't you agree?
Oh, totally agree. And I don't think it's fair enough. We haven't come far enough, but we need to keep working on it.
Francis, thanks for the call. We really appreciate it.
Our staff checked out countries like Luxembourg. They get very long leaves, 2 years postpartum, which is very generous. Obviously, you couldn't do that if you were running a company or a politician in office. But
well, except they say the leave can be taken in a variety of ways, including part-time or split.
Well, that's
so maybe you can soldier on.
And that's one of the great things you see now with companies doing these deals where dad gets 2 months, 4 months, and you can do it right at the beginning, or you can do it later on. There's much more flexibility, and it's, since we're so depressing all the time, it's nice to see that some things are improving in that regard.
Do you believe that people in this country don't demand more from elected leaders on the child care front?
Because one of the big things that's making it almost impossible to afford anything is childcare. College, when you get to that point, but childcare is more than most people's mortgages or rents, or maybe not now because rent and mortgage is so expensive. Here's I don't know if this was a texter or the staff, but it says, this feels familiar to the old should women be in combat debate. Not every woman can and should, but every woman should have the opportunity to make the choice about what they do with their bodies and their lives. Not sure why it's so hard for people to get their heads around women having autonomy in 2024. Actually, it's 2025 now, but here we are.
877-301-8970. What?
Did you see that note?
Is that true or is that not true?
We have someone on the phone
I don't
calling
know.
in for us?
Actually, we do. Is this? Should we take this? We have somebody who has an interest in this discussion joining us on the phone now. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Congratulations.
Here she
You gotta
is,
be
Michelle
kidding.
Wu, calling
This is
us up.
Mayor Wu. We're really thrilled for you, Mayor. How's the kid and how are you?
Thank you. We're all good. We're home. I'm sitting in the living room, nursing little Mira as we speak, and I hear everyone is telling me what to do around here.
Well, we're at least what I was saying is I think what you're doing is normalizing and showing that you can have the babies, raise the babies, run the city, that it's possible to do. And I think it's a great example for women. Doesn't mean everybody should do it, but so what do you think? Day 2, child number 3.
First, I am just so grateful for the incredible doctors and nurses and healthcare system that we have. We were at the Brigham for the 3rd time going through this, and just a reminder every time of how amazing the incredible people are to take care of so many families in the most important times in their lives, and for our city to be somewhere where people come from all over to access that kind of care. So it went very well for us, and we've been back home since yesterday. The boys are kind of a little bit in shock, but adjusting well, and Mira's been a joy. She's a dream, sleeping a lot, eating a lot, and doing everything that she's supposed to do.
Mayor Wu, did you, before you gave birth, and by the way, happy birthday. I forgot you. The next day was your birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yesterday.
Right.
Did you plan out with your team how you hoped this next, let's say, I don't know, month is going to go? Or did you basically say, I'll talk to you Wednesday or Thursday and tell you what I feel I can do and can't do? How'd you play this?
Well, I mean, we have the due date, which is just a general estimate.
Yeah.
And the other kids had come on time and late, so I actually did not expect her to come a little bit early. So we had events planned through Monday. There was a ribbon cutting I was going to do and some other internal meetings. So we ended up going to the hospital and not being able to do that. But I've been in touch with the team, even this morning, editing press releases or looking at different things that we're mapping out for the next couple weeks. So I think the timing has been the same. The city runs and our services are ones that people rely on 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. And I weigh in where I can and where I need to. And we're, keeping the business of the city going.
By the way, you sound terrific. Our staff just told us that the mayor called us on the same number that all the callers call in on, as opposed to the hotline.
And I did not get through. You have to call like 3 or 4 times. I wanted to hold you all accountable for once, so I'm going to keep trying.
Okay.
Hey, before you go, we really appreciate. We had no idea the mayor was calling in, by the way, and we were thrilled that you did. You mentioned in passing the 2 boys. How are they dealing with a sister?
They are. I mean, they woke up this morning, ran into the room. Each wanted to hold her. They're fighting over who can give her the most love. So this time is really special. And, just in the context of what everyone's been talking about, it's really important that whatever anyone's individual decision is, there is a paid leave option for every single person. And that's really important in City Hall, too. It's why I've pushed to write the ordinance, to negotiate it in all the collective bargaining agreements. We have many members of our cabinet and senior teams who take their leaves when they or their partners are growing their families or have babies, and that all should be normalized. Every option, every pathway, and for me, I'm doing it my way and doing it how I believe best serves the city, and it's honestly a joy to do it this way.
It's great. Now, Mayor Wu, since you're home, you'll call in again tomorrow, I assume. You'll just
That's what you're talking about. Only if it's interesting enough.
Mayor Wu, we really appreciate your call.
And I won't be able to say first long-time listener, first-time caller.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Boy, what a thrill.
Hey, it was
thank
a thrill.
you very much for
Congratulations to
calling.
all of you. It's
yeah.
great.
And
your husband as well.
Thank you.
Yes, and
Be well.
your boys. I'm glad they haven't asked you to send the baby home yet. It's a very good thing.
Take care, Mayor. It's good to talk to you. Be well.
Okay,
Thanks.
that was the mayor
Well, that was
of
thrilling,
Boston,
actually.
the mom herself, who, like I said, has normalized what you can do when you've got 3 little kids at home.
Well, I also think calling a talk radio show a day after you get home with your kid would suggest that maybe she can do all the things that the doubters are suggesting that maybe she can't, wouldn't you say?
Well, as one of the callers said, I think she's an extraordinary person in general. I mean, how many of us can run the city of Boston, bring up 2 little boys,
Play Mozart on the stage
with
at
the Boston
BSO.
Symphony Orchestra? I mean, it's unusual. Okay, are we moving on now?
We are moving on.
Okay, I think we are moving on. Okay, coming up next. Oh, Jared Bowen is going to be here with us. Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. He's going to tell us this weird story about a piece of art that's in downtown and what's going to happen with the Oscars. Jared Bowen is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
As his presidential term comes to an end, President Biden speaks to the nation from the Oval Office for the last time.
I want to lay out what we've done, the opportunities we've created for America, and those opportunities going forward.
From the legacy he leaves behind to the challenges ahead.
This is what we're heading into. And over the next administration, that's what we're handing it to.
It's Biden's farewell address. Listen tonight at 8 here on GBH 89.7 or online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Lowell Institute, presenting Mill Talk, Dark Tide, the Great Boston Molasses Flood of 1919. Tonight at 7 at the Charles River Museum of Industry and Innovation in Waltham. Learn more at lowellinstitute.org. And Subaru of New England. This winter, the all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Forester is committed to keeping your loved ones safe on snowy roads. You can find your Subaru retailer at subaruofnewengland.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, Chuck Todd, Andrew Cabral, Bill McKibben to talk about, obviously, the California fires and the future under Donald Trump come Monday on the environmental front. Back here Friday with live music. And State Auditor Diana DeZoglio will tell us what progress she's making, if any, with effectuating the popular will with auditing the legislature. We're joined now at the library desk by Jared Bowen, GBH's Executive Arts Editor and host of The Culture Show, which airs daily at exactly 2 o'clock on 89.7 GBH. Hey, Jared.
Good morning.
Hey, Jared. Great to see you and talk to you. So what is, in view of these horrible, in view of, no pun intended, of these horrible, horrible fires, what's happening with the Oscars?
There's been a lot of conversation. There's even been debate within Hollywood about how do you move forward with a celebration at this time when so much of California is still on fire. It's something that has obviously affected the heart of Hollywood, not the heart of Hollywood because the blazes weren't there, but its surrounds. And you had people like Gene Smart from Hacks, whose show just resumed filming, saying you just need to cancel these awards, take all the money you would use.
Oh, she is saying that? I didn't know
She
that.
posted something saying take all the money you would use toward production costs and just put this toward the fire. Adrian Brody just broke down the other night in an event for The Brutalist in New York. People are obviously horribly upset about this, but other people are arguing this is our industry, this is a gig economy, this is a huge moment for Los Angeles, the 2 months that lead up to the Academy Awards, because of all of the events, because of the production itself, because of all the interviews that happen. You have costume designers, you have makeup people, you have all of the people who are setting up the stanchions and everything around Los Angeles. And so for that reason, you should go to continue to grow this economy. So I think there's a way to do both. What they have done is they've delayed the voting for the Academy Awards because people haven't had the full opportunity to screen films, but they say the awards will still go on as scheduled on March 2nd. Conan O'Brien is the host this year. And I think that they can use that opportunity to have this still go forward so that everybody gets to keep their work, the work gets to keep going, but they can also draw attention to what has happened and both honor achievement here, but also hopefully use this as a moment to encourage people to donate, to draw more attention to whatever the status of Los Angeles is at that point, and use it that way.
Is film and television production, for the most part, continuing as
It is
would?
continuing. So a lot of movies aren't even shot in
Right,
LA
of course.
anymore
Yeah.
because the tax credits,
Yeah, right.
including like here in Massachusetts, it's less expensive for the studios to farm out their productions to places like Georgia and Massachusetts and everywhere else. However, a lot of the television shows are still shot there, and it didn't really affect any of the studios like Disney, Warner Brothers. They all closed down for a little bit to see where the fires are spreading. They realized they could reopen their studios and people are back to work, but they also have people who have lost their homes. Executives have lost their homes, so everybody is very aware of the impact. But I think they're just trying to keep things going simultaneously because obviously this is something that is going to have an impact on Los Angeles for years.
Oh, yeah. You know, I was telling Jim this morning, I was reading a piece about the Getty Museum, which so far has survived, and it's got incredible artwork there, but it talked about the millions and millions of dollars that they've spent there, stone roofs and stucco sides and everything, and the way they put the landscape in there is all anti-fire. They have to keep modifying it, and it gave you, obviously most people can't afford that, but it gave you an idea of what you're talking about in terms of fireproof, if there is any real such thing, building. It's enormously expensive.
Just the other day, I ran into Pedro Alonso, who we have regularly on the Culture Show, and he was saying the reason that you don't have fires in Mexico is because you don't have the growth in Mexico that you have in California, so that's why it can't spread as wildly. I mean, I heard this amazing piece on NPR. We probably talked about it, but so there were all the rains last year in California, and that caused all of this growth. So you think rain, wonderful, except for flooding in areas that were oversaturated because they hadn't had rain in so long. But then, of course, it fueled this growth. But then the growth dried out, and then that became fuel for these fires. And I think about all that's lost too, is in terms of the movie industry and memorabilia and artwork, and there's so much that we don't even have a sense yet of the scope of loss, in addition to lives, of course, and people's homes. And
I should know this about the
terrible.
Getty because I know Marjorie's talked a lot about it. I should have asked you this morning. Despite the fact that they have likely fire-resistant construction, do they move all the artwork just in case, or do they?
No, I mean, it was my understanding that they have thought this through, clearly.
Yes,
They have,
for
I think,
years.
1 million gallon water tank on
Really?
site. They have really thick walls, and then they have ways of shutting down the individual gallery walls so that they're basically vacuum sealed and the flames can't get in there.
And this elaborate air filtering system. I mean, it was really an incredible piece, but it gives you an indication of how laborious it is to fireproof.
It also gives you an indication if you've got a ton of dough, you can fireproof your house too.
Exactly.
Exactly. We're talking to Jared Bowen. Can we come back here? I have to say, I go out of my way to do almost nothing except maybe get a sandwich here and there. But I went out last year when I think you talked to us about this winter active thing where those inflatable clowns were downtown. I got in my car as fast as I loved those things. Did you like it? I hope you
I did like it, yeah.
I loved it. I mean, did you ever go see it?
Between buildings,
Between
yes,
buildings
these
on
huge things.
Washington Street.
Creepy
and
clowns,
It
yeah.
was really great. Okay, so Winter Active is back, and there's a pretty clever thing that's happening in the same neighborhood. What's that?
Yeah, so, a couple of different things. So the background to this
I
is...
get the name right. It's Winter Active.
It's Winter
right?
Active,
Okay,
yep.
yeah.
It's presented by the newly renamed Downtown Boston Alliance, and we have seen a lot of business move out of downtown Boston, so this is a way to get people kind of invigorated and get people coming back to downtown, but also it's really cold, it's really miserable, it's really gray. We spend a lot of time looking down now, and so the Downtown Boston Alliance basically went to Quebec. The Canadians know how to do cold, and they know how to survive the cold. So they collaborated with programmers and artists from Canada, and so we have the second year of Winter Active. And so one thing, if you do look up, you'll find these big, huge pink inflatable men who are peering into windows and hovering over streets and looking down at us from trees. And then this really, really funny installation, well, kind of funny, but also has some commentary. But there's a car parked in Downtown Crossing right now, and it has a satellite that has seemingly crashed onto its hood. And apparently it even has a parking ticket.
That's what I loved, yeah.
They disclosed, the city of Boston didn't I mean, can you imagine? There's a car with a satellite on it, but I'll just give it a ticket. But no, that wasn't actually the case. It was part of the installation. But this is also something to recognize. It's a piece that looks at a 1960s satellite that fell on this car, and once modern visions of the future, of a bright future, have kind of gone array. So that's what it is there.
Who are these people again? I mean, I love this. Who are these people?
This is the Downtown Boston Alliance that coordinated this. And really, it is for the purpose. By the way, you can tune into the Culture Show later today because the Downtown Boston Alliance will be on the show along with one of the artists. So we'll explore this a little more deeply. But it really is about just giving people a little bit of joy. I mean, they provoked people last year, I think, with the clowns. Not everybody loves a clown face peering out from two buildings. It's a little creepy when it's shoehorned in there.
Yeah.
I remember they also had the figures that were on top of buildings that confused people. They thought some people called in
might
complaints.
be jumping or something, right? Yeah.
So I think they've considered that this year in the myriad art that you'll see. But there are light installations, there are pink inflatable men, the satellite car. So it's just a fun thing to do to get us outside and be a little bit distracted by this horrible cold.
Okay, let's talk about some of the art and theater that's around town. Crumbs from the Table of Joy at the Lyric Stage, Boston, through the 2nd of February.
Yeah, I really, really, really liked this show. This is an early play by Lynn Nottage, who is a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. She also wrote the book for the Michael Jackson musical, MJ. She's very, very prolific, but we see this is one of her, as I mentioned, early works from 1995. And it's a memory play, and it's told really from the point of view of a 17-year-old girl whose mother has died, and so her father has moved the family, so it's her father, herself, and her sister, from Florida to New York. And they're trying to get resituated without having their mom, and their father is completely distraught and destroyed by losing his wife. And you also have a black family who's trying to assimilate in New York, and being from the South and finding these wildly different customs and sensibilities in New York when you're from Florida. So that we're looking at all this through the prism of her life, and she's looking at it through the prism of movies. She loves movies, which I think we can all relate to. I know I certainly did when I grew up. I expected so much of life to play out like the movies, or to look like the movies.
What happened?
It doesn't always. Well, first of all, a lot of movies end badly. Yeah, exactly. And so I just found this really, really sincere. So then we meet extra characters. We meet her aunt who comes into her life, and her aunt is full of life, and she's vibrant, and she's going to take the world by storm, but that doesn't quite work out for her. And then her father remarries in a very, very surprising way. I don't want to give it away here, but I found it, again, very, very touching to have the perspective of the 17-year-old girl looking at life, and this is all, by the way, set in the 1950s, and trying to get on her feet and figure out who she's going to be as a person, as a lot of her life has already gone in disarray in childhood.
You know, when I read one of the reviews, and it says the title came from a Langston Hughes poem, and so I looked at the poem, and generally my rule of thumb is if a poem is short, there's a decent chance I'll actually understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
This is short. I have no idea. So let me read it to you, and then you can you too, Marjorie.
Okay.
Sometimes a crumb falls from the tables of joy. Sometimes a bone is flung. To some people, love is given. To others, only heaven. Go ahead.
You're asking me?
Both of you. What does that mean?
Your crumbs from the table of joy, and sometimes it's crumbs, sometimes it's more than that, and it's what you make of what you receive. And so that's why we have our 17-year-old. Okay, this is her founding, and these are the people who surround her, and in some cases there are little crumbs because there are cookies abound in
Why
this
couldn't
play.
I figure that out? Did you figure that out?
No. That's
Okay.
why we have Jared here to explain these things to us, Jim.
That was a guess, right? That was a good guess. I think it was a very
that's
good
my interpretation. This is the beauty of it. If somebody else could have a completely different interpretation.
Sue, do you have an interpretation? No, she has not.
Yes, she does.
Sitting over there in fabulous boots, I
She
might
thinks
add.
this is an NPR SNL parody. That's what she thinks.
No, I mean Langston Hughes. You like Langston Hughes, right? That's what it said. That's what Jamie said. Okay, so that's Crumbs from the Table of Joy, Lyric Stage through February 2nd.
So this thing at the MFA, different views of the sea, sounds really cool.
It's called Deep Waters for Artists in the Sea.
Deep Waters for Artists in the Sea. That is right.
Yeah, this is kind of stunning. And I'll tell you, I wasn't planning on covering this, and a week ago, I went to the MFA on a Sunday just to walk around and enjoy art.
Pretended you were school kids so you could get in free? Is that what you did?
Well, I have a membership, so I got in. But you know what? It was
packed?
It was one of the free school, and it was packed, and there was
great.
a lot of energy.
Just
it was
great.
fabulous. It was actually, I believe it was the first energy, while Mayor Michelle Wu, now a regular on Boston Public Radio.
Regular caller.
A regular caller, regular everything, was across the street visiting the Gardner Museum with her family.
Oh, that's great.
On
I read that,
first free
actually. I
Sunday.
think
Yeah,
it's
it was
right,
lovely to see.
It's great.
But so I walked up to the third floor of the Art of the Americas, and I knew that this exhibition was coming, but I'd kind of forgotten about it. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So Deep Waters, For Artists and the Sea, takes two pieces that we know well from the Museum of Fine Arts collection. One is John Singleton Copley's Watson and the Shark, where you have a group of men in a boat. There's a shark who seems to be attacking a man who's in the water. They're trying to rescue him. And one of the figures in this portrait from 1778 is a black man who is standing upright. He's, I believe, if memory serves, he's standing taller than anybody else in the ship. And it's a very turbulent, very captivating scene. The second major piece in the MFA's collection is J.M.W. Turner's Slave Ship, in parentheses.
This was very upsetting.
Yeah, slavers throwing overboard the dead and dying, typhoon coming on, where we find a slave ship and a number of enslaved people in the water drowning. And again, this is Turner painting it, so it's something that is based on fact that happened in 1840. And a more contemporary piece, Ayanna V. Jackson, has two photographs, and it's inspired by this mythical utopia, an aquatic utopia populated by descendants of pregnant women who lost their lives in the Atlantic Ocean during the Middle Passage. All of that leads us into John Acumfra's 3-channel major video installation. They cleared out a huge portion of the gallery. You walk into this very dark space, and this film is unfolding these 3 giant screens, and it's essentially telling us the story of the oceans and of immigrants and migrants and animals within the ocean. And he's, when I happened to enter into this film, because you don't necessarily wait for it to start, you can enter in at any time, we had these really majestic views of the sea, and it was gorgeous. And because these screens are so huge and because the sound is so robust, we find these beautiful pictures of the ocean. But then he begins to juxtapose them with scenes of migration, of enslavement, of the Vietnamese boat people, and of the horrific ways we've treated whales. He has historic video of the harpooning of whales, and it's a very intense piece about this part of our planet that I don't think we still fully understand, and how we've exploited it, how it's changing. Of course, climate change is having a great effect, and it's all addressed in this piece. People, by the way, might remember John Acumfra as having had Purple, an installation at the ICA watershed a few years ago, looking at other issues around climate change.
Oh, yes.
Do we have any of this, Jamie, to put up there?
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
have
clear.
Watson and the Shark, I think.
Do we have something?
Yeah, but I don't know
We'll see.
if we passed on.
Well, maybe we do, maybe we don't.
Okay, maybe we do, maybe we don't.
So that is there through November
All right.
9th. I'd say we don't. Is more likely in this particular case.
So, man, Murray White, great critic in the Globe, wrote about this Cherokee artist's view of the American landscape. Made me feel like a real idiot for being such a fan of the Hudson River School.
Well, no.
Because I didn't think of the Hudson River School the way he straightened me out in this piece. Explain what he talked about.
We know a lot more now. So there's a piece on view at the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover. By the way, Addison's always free. I love how you know that.
I learned it from you.
And so this is K. Walking Stick Hudson River School. And so this is organized by the New York Historical Society, which has a great collection of Hudson River School paintings.
Can I interrupt 1 second? CNN is reporting that Hamas has approved the Gaza ceasefire hostage agreement. We'll update you on that as we hear more. I'm sorry, Jared. Continue.
No.
My
That's
apologies.
great.
Yep.
That's
go ahead.
Great news to
well,
be
I don't know
hearing.
where Israel is on this. Can somebody check on the Israeli side of this and see
There's
if a deal is being
33
struck?
hostages, I believe, are still.
We don't know. We don't know how many are alive.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Jared. My apologies.
So I was just explaining for the Hudson River School paintings that were done in the 1800s, beautiful landscape paintings of America, first in the Hudson River Valley in New York, painters like Beersart and other great painters of that era, Thomas Cole. And then the second generation basically went out west and painted these beautiful portraits manifest destiny portraits to make people, pioneers, realize the land that was up for grabs and how beautiful and expansive this country is and how it could be populated. The problem being that it meant the forced evacuation and murder of Native Americans on those lands. So that's why it's very significant that we have Kay Walkingstick of both European descent and Cherokee descent, who is answering these paintings with her own contemporary landscape paintings. Some are contemporary, some are throughout her career. But she will be the first to acknowledge, and we had her on the Culture Show just the other day, so you can go back to our podcast and listen to her interview, that yes, we know today what that meant to have this propaganda in some way espoused, but at the same time she recognizes that these are beautiful paintings. And so in her paintings, she wants people to recognize, not unlike John O'Comfort, we have this gorgeous land, we have this beautiful landscape that she has rendered, whether it's up and down the eastern seaboard or it's Niagara Falls, or it's the Trail of Tears, which of course is very impactful when she as a Cherokee woman is acknowledging this. And she creates these patterns, these Native American patterns that she paints or stencils across these paintings, so it leaves the indigenous imprint on what she's rendering. So this show at the Addison gives us a lot of these historical paintings from the 1800s, and then again answered by Kay Walkingstick and how she brings us into these lands.
By the way, your guests on your show are terrific.
Great.
You and your team really have terrific guests. By the way, an update on this according to the Times. Negotiators from Hamas and Israel have provisionally agreed to the broad outline of a ceasefire in Gaza, though they have yet to confirm its start date and other technical issues. According to a senior official from one of the mediating countries and 2 senior Israeli officials, the deal still needs, thank you very much, the deal still needs to be formally ratified by the Israeli cabinet, and there's some issues, but it appears great progress is being made there. How does Addison, I must ask you this, how do they do a free thing? Do they have huge donors? Is it part of the school? What's going on?
Because they're associated with Phillips Academy,
Yeah.
I think that's how it's able to happen. And that school has long made arts a central focus of what it does. Frank Stella is probably its most famous alum.
That's a pretty big deal.
And they recognize the value of having a museum on campus when you can create a Frank Stella at the end of the day. And so they have always funded that museum really, really well, and it has always collected. And then you've had a lot of financial support and people like Frank Stella turning around and donating really, really significant pieces of art. And so I think the art world recognizes the Addison as a treasure of a museum, and therefore they can make sure that other people can recognize that with no barrier to entry.
One last question about free, and we were talking about the Great Sunday thing for school kids. Am I correct about this, that Mayor Wu extended this to all Boston school kids, not just BPS kids?
It's all kids.
That's fabulous.
It's so part of the METCO program, part of charter schools,
That's
kids who
really
go to private
exciting.
schools.
It's great.
And she extended it all the way through the end of 2026, 2 years. And, as she told me on the Culture Show, she expects that the performing arts will begin to enter into this in some capacity too. So it'll also go beyond museums, which I think is really, really exciting.
Well, remember she talked about how going to museums in Chicago was life-changing for her as a kid with her mother. So thank you very much, Jared
You'll be
Bowen.
back later to tell us what you're doing at 2 o'clock.
Great to be with you.
Don't go too far. Nice to see you, Jared Bowen.
Jared Bowen, Executive Arts Editor and host of The Culture Show, which airs immediately after us at 2 o'clock every day here on 89.7 GBH. And on Friday, Jared and the gang broadcast live from here, The Culture Show. Coming up after the new news, media maven Sue O'Connell is going to join us. She's going to talk about Pete Hegseth, who wants to be the guy running the Pentagon 2025 as the year.
From you. And New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in state-of-the-art facilities located in Westboro, Mass. Learn more at newenglandrecoverycenter.org or by calling 1-877-MY-REHAB. She's a moped rider, winemaker, part-time forensic scientist, and a full-time nun. She's also the police's secret weapon for solving murders. Catch Sister Boniface Mysteries tonight at 8 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the library. It's media maven and local woman Sue O'Connell with her analysis of the start of the confirmation hearings for the incoming Trump cabinet. And in a related note, we'll get Sue's thoughts on 2025 as the year of the alpha male.
That's right, Jim. This is your year. I'm Marjorie Egan, and tech guru Andy Ihnatko is here to explain what the end of TikTok would look like and why thousands of users are flocking to yet another China-owned video sharing app instead of Zuckerberg's Reels. And then it's our new segment, Two More Things. I want to talk about Michelle Obama and the inauguration, and Mr. Alpha Male over there wants to gripe about boiled egg hack. We'll see who wins out next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The death toll in the Southern California wildfires now stands at 25. That figure is expected to rise as the search continues for dozens more people who are unaccounted for. Tens of thousands of individuals have been evacuated. NPR's Martin Costi reports on the efforts to find enough housing.
The big job right now is figuring out how to shelter so many people who've lost their homes. The rental market here was already super expensive, and we're hearing reports of rent increases that qualify as price gouging under state law. The city attorney is going to be on the lookout for that, she says. Mayor Karen Bass said the city is trying to make 1,200 more units of housing available in the next week or so. They want to streamline permitting for faster rebuilding, but it's a massive effort looming ahead of this region.
According to the CAL FIRE website, the Santa Ana winds that can fuel the fires are expected to diminish, but humidity will remain at low levels. A red flag warning remains in effect through tonight. Containment of the Eaton fires increased to 45%. The larger Palisades fire is 19% contained now. Florida Republican U.S. Senator Marco Rubio is expected to sail through his confirmation process to be the next Secretary of State. He's being questioned today in the Foreign Relations Committee, where he's been a longtime member. Here's NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
The Republican chairman and the top Democrat on the committee are already telling Rubio that they think he's well qualified to lead Donald Trump's State Department as they question him about Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, and China. Rubio says voters gave Trump a, quote, unmistakable mandate.
They want a strong America engaged in the world, but guided by a clear objective: to promote peace abroad and security and prosperity here at home.
If confirmed, the Florida-born son of Cuban immigrants would be the first Latino to serve as America's top diplomat. He would also be the first to face travel restrictions in China. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Consumer prices rose 2.9% from a year ago in December in the U.S., marking a third consecutive monthly increase in annual inflation. NPR's Raphael Nam reports.
Inflation is proving to be pretty stubborn. Yes, it has eased a lot from the very high level of 9.1% over a couple years ago. But in the past few months, it has been moving higher, not lower. A big reason for the uptick last month was gas prices. But there was some good news. Factoring out gas and food prices, inflation came below expectations. Overall, though, it means the Federal Reserve may have to keep interest rates higher for a little longer, after cutting them by a full percentage point last year. And the outlook for inflation is very uncertain. President-elect Donald Trump says he wants tariffs and mass deportations, which economists say could make inflation worse. Raphael Nam, NPR News.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. We're just getting word from CNN that Hamas and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire hostage deal. The story is just now breaking. Worcester City Councilor Tu Nguyen says they'll be taking a 1-month hiatus from their position alleging transphobia and toxic culture on the council. Nguyen made history in 2021 when they became the first non-binary person elected to a government position here in Massachusetts. Speaking to GBH News earlier this month, they said that during their time in office over the last 3 years, they have felt unsafe in the council's work environment.
You know, I've been misgendered by the mayor right after talking about how I've been misgendered. I've been misgendered by my own colleagues. I know that one of my colleagues called me it.
Nguyen has formally requested for the City of Worcester's Chief Equity Officer to open an immediate investigation into the alleged behavior and create an action plan to address transphobia. State Trooper Michael Proctor, the former lead investigator in the Karen Reed murder trial, has a meeting with the State Police Trial Board today. The board conducted an internal affairs investigation into Proctor over misconduct allegations related to his behavior during the high-profile investigation. Proctor has publicly admitted to making, quote, unprofessional and regrettable comments about Reed during the investigation into the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. He's been suspended without pay since July. The hearing could result in disciplinary action up to and including being fired. If Proctor is found responsible for misconduct, a mistrial in Reed's case was declared in July. A second trial is set to begin April 1st. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, where drivers can compare direct rates using Progressive's rate comparison tool. Customers can see options and rates side by side. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you very much. And streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by Chuck Todd. Can't wait to talk to him. Former Sheriff of Suffolk County, Andrew Cabral. Bill McKibben, the great environmentalist, on the LA fires and what Trump is going to mean for climate change initiatives. We'll be back here on Friday with live music and State Auditor Diana DeZoglio. Of course, she's the one that wants to audit the legislature, and 72% of voters in Massachusetts think it's a good idea. Hello, Jim.
Only 72%, and the legislature's holding out. It's great. We're joined now at the desk by our favorite local woman and 12 o'clock segment saver. Well, actually, I shouldn't have said that because no one knows what I'm talking about. Sue O'Connell of NBC 10 Boston. She is co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News. Hello. No, excuse me. Good day, Sue.
Good day. Good day. Good day. Happy
Nice
Wednesday. Good to see
Hi.
you.
So,
Boy, that was horrible.
Sorry.
Hi.
Well, I was anticipatory
Of
Okay.
our topic.
upset
Sorry, go ahead.
because
Anticipatory.
it's fairly. I could be wrong, but it looks to me like Pete Hegseth is going to be the next head of the Defense Department, and it's upsetting considering what John Kelly, who used to be the chief of staff, a local guy, was a big general and all of them, you know, from Mattis to at the Exxon guy, they've all said Trump is a danger, and his guy is going to be running the Pentagon, and that makes me very nervous. But
Well, not only his guy, but his guy who should be disqualified from the job for personal behavior and professional behavior, and also probably because he's not qualified for the job, right? So you have, and you had the 5 Republican senators, including Joni Ernst, you were thinking may actually hold the line and say, we're not going to confirm him or we need more, and that did not happen at all. In fact, she was critical of Hegseth prior to in December, and then basically, as the slogan has become, took the knee and said, I'm basically going to confirm him. She said that last night. So, I don't know what one needs to do in order to be disqualified from a government position of any type anymore now that Trump is president, and that's it's just astonishing.
By the way, this shouldn't have to be said, but I think I speak for Marjorie. He won the election. To quote Barack Obama, elections have consequences. He is entitled to his own people if they're qualified. And he is. It doesn't matter what their politics are. I agree with you. He is not. Pam Bondi for AG is testifying today. She said not to. She's the Justice Department, law enforcement. She said today no one is above the law, yet her own Justice Department, we all know, would have dismissed all the cases against him if Jack Smith hadn't. She's an election denier who now says, of course, because she's testifying, that Trump won. It seems to me if Hegseth gets through, which it appears he's going to, the only person who is at some risk of being defeated is
Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard is the head of national security.
Right, and you might think, if we're not being completely, I'm not being completely cynical, that maybe the senators are deciding that they have to fight her and they're going to take their medicine and deal with the appointees and the nominees that may not be qualified and fight against her to try and take that win. I mean, it's just an upside down world. I also had to laugh. We had this whole discussion at the NBC newsroom yesterday about how it's sometimes harder in the olden days, the before times, to get nominated and approved by the Senate rather than running for office and being elected, right? So you could say, I'm Bill Clinton and I smoke pot, and it doesn't disqualify you, but if one of his nominees in those days had said that, they might be disqualified. But we now live in a world where whatever the president did, the nominees are okay and they're going to get qualified. But I'm happy to hear that senators are voting drunk, which is what we heard.
Well, here it is. We have sound.
Yes,
Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. Now, most of you say, I think I've heard that name. He was the one who threatened to punch out the president of the Teamsters when he was testifying before Congress. Here he is, as Sue said, saying some senators drink on the job and have affairs when speaking about the hypocrisy of holding Pete Hegseth to a higher standard than themselves. Here's Senator Mullen.
The senator from Virginia starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night?
Excellent
Have
point.
any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job?
Nope.
And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives?
Right.
Did you ask them to step down?
So his basic point is we're all cheating and all drunk, so why shouldn't a cheating drunk
Remember, they were talking
be
about the
Secretary of
orgies
Defense?
that were happening. And,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole lot of
Nothing
fun
wrong
these
with that.
elected officials are having. But again, the difference in the point, of course, is that the voters get to choose whether or not they want these drunk senators or not every time that they have an election. The citizens of the United States do not get to choose, do we want someone who may have a drinking problem in charge of answering the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning to decide whether or not to scramble the jets. And that's the difference, right? So
Okay, so Senator Mullen is clearly the person of the day, because not only did he say, we're drunk too, so what's wrong with him?
I'm drunk now.
He ends his interview of his questioning of what's his name, Hegseth, by saying the following. You'll hear it in a second. And since he does an invitation, the response to what he says is given by Stephen Colbert on a show last night. Here it is.
You want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke.
I got one. Okay. A drunk, a cheating husband, and an accused sexual predator walk into a bar, and the bartender says, "Table for one, Mr. Hegseth?" Thank you.
By the way, what he meant to say is give me a break, and he said give me a joke instead, and that's what what's his face said.
Yeah.
So in any case, the hearings go on. Today is Bondi for AG and Marco Rubio, who seems to be, frankly, very qualified.
Yeah, he is very qualified.
To be the Secretary of State.
I mean, this is the world that we're in. He's very qualified. Again, to your point, you could disagree with his politics and his policies, but he actually is qualified.
Well, with one I don't want to criticize you, but you made one big mistake there. The one qualification he does not have is there is no allegation he's ever come to work drunk. And if he hasn't come to work drunk, why does he belong in this cabinet?
Be
exactly.
Right.
We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
You know, I was thinking yesterday when I was watching Hegseth that it really helps to have been a television star.
Yes.
Because he clearly was very cool, and central casting, that's a big thing.
Good
for
communicator.
Trump.
He was an excellent communicator.
Look at how TV and The Apprentice helped Donald Trump. But he's also, I guess, what fits into the alpha male kind of mold. He was, in credit to him, a distinguished veteran. He got a lot of medals when he was in Iraq and Afghanistan. But alpha male is supposedly the theme of 2025.
Alpha male.
Oh, is that Julian, whatever the hell his name is?
Yes,
Thank
Julian,
you for
alpha
that.
male. Yeah, we are seeing, and it's not just pop culture, but there is this, now that Donald Trump is about to be our president again, this resurgence or this emergence of this alpha male energy that many men feel that they have been suppressing for the past, maybe generation.
That's
and
right.
it's Mark Zuckerberg going on Joe Rogan and complaining about how he got a mother, he has all sisters, he's married to a woman, he's got daughters, and he just needs to get some male energy going at Facebook, at Meta, because he's just overwhelmed by this femininity, all the while looking like the kind of guy that I could beat up in a hallway, okay? The male energy that you've got Tate, what's his name? His first name?
Andrew
Tate, who has boasted about raping and assaulting women, and he's being, escalated and held up as this male model. When, the primary thing about masculinity, which I think is not necessarily a male trait, I think I'd hope we had evolved into thinking that masculine energy and feminine energy were not necessarily gender specific.
Right.
But apparently we're about to go back. So I will just say I would be happy to fight any of these guys who are going forward with their masculine energy to take over. I would also like to point out that most of the history of the world where we have had terrible, terrible, terrible mistakes happen were done by men. Okay,
correct.
so and I've been pushing back against this DEI argument, like, oh, the DEI, look, it's a black woman in charge, a black man in charge, there's a lesbian in charge, the firefighter is overweight. I don't know if anyone has seen firefighters, but some of them actually do end up overweight and still can fight fires. Most of the mistakes we've had in the world have been by men in charge.
That's
so
an excellent point.
DEI, if you think that women are making some mistakes or African Americans are making mistakes, I would like to look at the scorecard and compare them. But the male energy thing, it's dangerous in some sense because we have a whole generation of young men who have been watching really violent porn on their phones since they were teenagers, are playing violent games, and obviously are listening to a number of podcasts that are encouraging them in a way that is probably not healthy for society. So on one hand, it's very concerning. In the other hand, I'll take it outside.
Speaking of it, can we stay on the topic of alpha males just for a second? There's a poll that I don't know if I was going to say I was shocked by. I think I'm shocked by. Obviously, Eric Adams is in trouble in New York, despite the fact that he and Trump apparently are becoming buddies. And I assume people following that story. There's a poll that shows Andrew Cuomo, former governor. Let me read from the New York Times. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed 13 women who worked for the state over the course of an 8-year period, according to the Department of Justice. He is the prohibitive frontrunner. If the election were today, the guy who sexually harassed 13 women, at least 13 that we know about, would be the next mayor of New York City. So he's got that same qualification that Hegseth has, Donald Trump has, and he has.
It's not disqualifying. It is not disqualifying in any way now, and that's something that should be very worrisome to anybody who's in the workplace, anybody who is going out on dates, anybody who has been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted in any way, that it doesn't disqualify you from being promoted, being in charge of something, being president of the United States.
Okay, so let me ask the same question we asked repeatedly during the presidential campaign, a totally useless waste of time, but I'll ask the question again. Put yourself in the mind of a woman who is not you, who says, I'm going to vote for a guy. Now, Marjorie's going to say they don't believe it. Okay, some believe that Trump is a serial sexual abuser, and he was found by a court to be a sexual abuser / rapist, according to other states' laws in the E. Jean Carroll case. And then we have Hegseth, and now we have Andrew Cuomo, runaway leader in the polls. We don't know. So what is a woman who is not you, who's voting in New York, or a senator on the United States Senate, or a woman who voted for Donald Trump saying to themselves about this? It's not true, or it doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't. Both. I mean, I've talked to women who have voted for Donald Trump and are think that it's not true, that the allegations...
He didn't sexually
abuse.
Anybody.
He didn't walk into...
she's making it up.
And so what if he walked
All
into
of them are making it
a
up.
dressing room, with Miss Teen America or Miss USA when
partially
they
undressed, right?
Yeah, it's not true, or they're overreacting, and that's what they say. And I think that the depth of what you can, listen, we all have to compartmentalize when we are voting for people, right? In all sorts of ways. This, though, is obviously not a disqualifying red line for many voters, including women, and I don't understand. It's like January 6th. I've talked to a number of what I would call Reagan Democrats in their 60s and 70s who found the January 6th events to be disqualifying for them to consider Donald Trump. Why don't other people? I don't know.
Well, you know what's
people are
particularly troubling about Cuomo? I'm not saying he's worse than Hegseth or Trump. He's bad. Is New York City are all Democratic voters. There are almost no Republicans in New York City except Staten Island and a little bit in Queens. And the Democrats are overwhelmingly liberal Democrats. Not all, but liberal Democrats. And he's not winning this race today. And some may say name recognition, it's possible. But he's crushing every candidate, including the incumbent mayor, in a liberal-leaning, overwhelmingly Democratic city. And he's obviously a Democrat.
Yeah.
It's just,
no,
it's stunning.
we have seen a swing back of awareness around sexual assault, sexual harassment that is more than just a couple of ticks. I mean, we have set back, I think, victims' rights enormously. I think, at the end of this year, we're going to be living in a world where we thought we had fixed or at least reduced some of these problems.
Well, one of the texters thinks that Sue O'Connell versus the Zuck is an easy win for Sue.
I think so, too.
He's an alpha?
Yeah.
Maybe lowercase a.
I believe so. He's definitely a beta.
He does do martial arts, though. Isn't he taking martial arts?
Wasn't he going to do a cage match with Musk?
Right,
right?
with Musk. I could take him, too.
Yeah, I have to say, I wouldn't have brought this up, but since you were candid about your ability to beat the crap out of these guys, what did you say when we were watching video yesterday morning of Zuckerberg?
Well, he's got the curls going.
What's with the hair, she says.
Yeah, what's the hair?
With
He's got the chain.
He's going back to high school with the curls.
If I keep saying this, I don't know how much money you need to go away. Like Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, just take your money. I mean, Bezos has been a little bit going away, since he kind of disassociated.
One of the inauguration.
No, I know, I get that. But, he's not as troublesome as the other two are. If anybody wants to give me $5 million net, I will go away. That's all I want to say.
By the way, he also killed the editorial endorsing Kamala Harris at the newspaper he owns.
It could have been worse.
At the Washington Post. Okay, I don't know how, but okay.
Okay, well, President Biden is going to be delivering a farewell address tonight. And I guess he's going to be doing a couple more farewells before he leaves.
I think this is it, actually. I think this is the big one, isn't it?
I think it is.
This is the big one. He's doing smaller ones, maybe I should say that, around in different agencies.
How great if he gets to announce the ceasefire, if it's formalized by tonight. Would that be great for him and the people of the world?
But, what is your emotion? I just feel bad.
I live in a household with Ruby, who you all know, my daughter, who is 24 years old.
She is.
And she has an abnormal emotional attachment to Joe Biden.
Good for her.
So the first time it happened was a year ago December when, or in December when, a year ago December when Joe went on TikTok and Instagram for the first time. And Ruby, I came into the living room and she was sobbing on the couch. And I said, what orphaned elephant are you watching on TikTok now? What rescued? What are we all upset about today? And she said, Joe Biden lost his family in a car crash.
Oh, she had
no idea. So she cried about that for a day. And then later she learned that they were on their way to get a Christmas tree. Yeah. And I don't mean to make light of this. It was a terrible thing. And then she cried some more. And then during the State of the Union, as he walked onto the floor, we were watching it together, she cried. It keeps going. And then when they had the debate and he did terrible, she yelled at me during the entire debate because I'm texting with my colleagues like, oh my God, this is terrible. Don't make fun of him. How dare you? And then she saw the picture of Bo on his desk and then one couldn't believe that just happened. Like Bo had just reached. She cried again. We were on the beach when the announcement came on Crane Beach, when the announcement came that he was pulling out of the race. She immediately started crying, and she cried so much that the people next to us asked us how long we had known the Bidens.
Oh, my God.
We have never met the Bidens.
God.
So she cried last night in anticipation of tonight's thing. So I think that, there is going to be a feeling of a lot of people, and she's not like necessarily political. I just want to be clear. It's not like we sit home talking policy or she pays any attention to anything that I do or say. But I think that this is going to be one of those moments of, 40 years of service that Joe Biden has given, and many ways being sort of the real person in politics, whether or not he was sticking his foot in his mouth or making a joke with Barack Obama about swearing in on the Bibles again, which, Obama did not enjoy during the presidency, and giving him that Obama look. I think that this is going to be a very emotional week for a number of people.
Yeah, I hope people pay attention, and I hope, given time, that people separate his horrible decision to run for re-election and the consequences of dropping out too late from what he did accomplish. And in the first 2.5 years, maybe,
it was one of the most successful
yeah.
presidencies in the modern era. And, you know, had he said after 2 years, I'm stepping down, the world would be a different spot right now. But,
you know, we talked about alpha males a minute ago. I've said this before, but I'll say it one more time. Whenever I repeat something, Marjorie gets aggravated. It makes me happy. Is when I was at
that's
NECN,
very alpha male of you, Jim.
Thank you. Right. I think in I don't know what year it was. What year did, Biden ran for president a lot. In what year did John McCain run for president? Was it
2000?
No, not 2000. 2008. Thank you, John Parker.
Oh, that's right. Against Obama.
I was at NECN. I had an hour in the studio, at your old studio, with John McCain, then an hour the next day with Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was then, still in the primary. Two of the most decent, down-to-earth people, and I think I've told this part, which matters to me the most about them, beyond the interview, they were very personable and totally accessible and normal, is both of them, before they left NECN, made sure that every single staff person, every single one who wanted to talk to them, they at least shook their hands, said hello, asked a question about their family or their job. It was two grown-ups. It really, really made me feel good about American politics. And this is in a state where Biden knew if he was the nominee, he'd win in a walk. And John McCain knew he had no chance of winning at all in Massachusetts, but they were two really mentions.
Even here, though, like John McCain, Straight Talk Express.
Just
Remember
being
that?
A decent human being. I mean, it's really
5 years in Vietnam in a cage. I mean, for God's sake.
Yeah, just being a decent human being, would go a long way, and respecting people, and just, I think that we're entering this era of America where we're going to revert to the if I see it, I want it kind of thing. And I think this idea about Greenland and Panama Canal and dissing Canada and threatening to invade Mexico and elevating people who are accused of sexual assault, I think it's really going to be a terrible at least 4 years.
I'm not laughing at you, but Sue, if you just tuned in, said a minute ago that she could punch out all of these high-tech alpha males. And Linda in the South Shore, essentially to you, says the alpha males are cutting off their eyelashes too. All Sue has to do is blow dust in their faces. So you're a winner regardless.
Off their eyelashes?
They're doing all kinds of weird stuff. Zuckerberg's out there shooting buffalo on he's in a bow and arrow. It's like this cosplay male energy. Like, what would men do? They would, who's a real man? Mr. Rogers was a real man.
That's right.
Okay, so act like Mr. Rogers. How about that? I'm not going to fight him. I'm not fighting Mr. Rogers.
Can I tell you, since so many people applauded when you said Rogers, let me spend a minute on that. We've encountered, you and I both, since we've been working at GBH, a bunch of people who knew Mr. Rogers, and I am always nervous to ask, what was he like? Right. Because you fear that somebody who you think is so fabulous is not. Every single person we have, Marjorie, I said, what was he like? With some trepidation, without one exception, people went on and on about what a wonderful, genuine, authentic person was, exactly in real life, like he was.
Yeah, I work with someone in the same situation. Thing? Yep, just a
really
great person. A real man. Actually. That's a real man.
So, tell us about this misinformation problem with the Los Angeles fires. Apparently, there was some video running around of firefighters extinguishing flames or trying to with women's handbags, because supposedly that was all they were left to work with.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have this conversation every time there's a national emergency.
Yeah.
We talked about it last week. We talked about it during the hurricanes. The information, especially now that Mark Zuckerberg has decided to get rid of the fact-checking on Facebook. And I don't think we understand how much fact-checking was happening. This is going to be one of those situations that immediately the algorithm would pick up things and some poor person would have to check and look at stuff and not let it get posted, or it would get flagged and taken down until it was fact-checked. We are now about to have a complete avalanche of information on social media that is not only wrong, but is dangerous and is misleading. And again, with the fires, anytime there's a national emergency or a crisis, you need to only look at your trusted news sources. You can disagree with us. You can think that we're not the best in the world. You can understand that we make mistakes. But your NPRs, your GBHs, your NBCs, your ABCs, your Boston Globe, your New York Times, those are the accounts that are going to give you fact-checked information, not made-up things that AI can do or some bot in China is trying to get you to believe. There were problems in our problems fighting these fires. Real problems that we all have to look at and need to be examined. Putting them out with handbags is not one of them.
So two quick things. By the way, Andy Ihnatko, our tech guy, is going to join us in a minute and talk about, one of the things he's going to talk about is about this dropping of fact-checking. But you said go to sources you trust. I would have to say my top two national sources until about a month ago was the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. Do you trust when you read the Washington Post now?
I do.
Are you
for
confident?
The reporting. I do for and again, the hard part about this is basic reporting stuff we're talking about. We're not talking about in-depth investigative reporting. We're just talking about, can you confirm it on the ground? Do you have someone
How
to tell
do you
you
know they
this?
didn't kill an important story that may have
They may
contradicted? When you don't know,
No,
right?
but this is why you look at more sources. And when you just get to basic reporting where the story you're reading has a name on it of who wrote it, who the person talked to, another source who confirms it, and will qualify things like this is what we know, or this is what the police told us. You know, those are qualifying words and statements that make you understand that this has been fact-checked and they're presenting it to you like that.
Can I just say one last thing, which you weren't going to announce today, but since you brought it up. During the next pledge drive, we will be auctioning off part of the prize for $120 or $10 a month is closed circuit Sue punching out one of the high-tech alpha males. So I don't know when the next pledge is, but stick around.
You know, you don't
Boy,
get,
would I pay to see that.
You don't get beat up every day in the 60s and 70s on Shirley Ave Revere without having some skills that you learn.
Yeah, I bet you got pretty tough. I bet
you get beat up a lot, and eventually you figure it out. So.
Sue O'Connell, great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We've been speaking with local woman at NBC 10 Boston, Sue O'Connell. She's co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, and she joins us every week. She's our media maven, and we love her. Coming up after a quick break, our tech guru, Andy Ihnatko, joins us. He's going to talk about the possible ban of TikTok and more about Facebook or Meta taking away their fact-checking. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Elon Musk helped President-elect Trump return to the White House. Now, car safety advocates are worried that Musk will influence federal agencies regulating businesses like Tesla.
Tesla has been overselling the effectiveness of its technology for years. And a lot of people buy into that because it's tweeted about that way.
The fight over crash reporting requirements on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Comcast, offering Xfinity Mobile, featuring data options that include streaming, browsing, and texting. More information is available at xfinity.com/mobile. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Crumbs from the Table of Joy. Set in 1950s Brooklyn, two sisters mourn the loss of their mother with Hollywood films, daydreams, and lots of cookies. January 10th through February 2nd at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy, live at the library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, Chuck Todd, Andrew Cabral, Bill McKibben, talking about the California fires and climate change come Monday. Back here Friday with live music and State Auditor Diana DiZoglio talking about our effort to audit the legislature, backed by 72% of the voters. We're joined now on Zoom by, talk about a great and horrible week to have this guy on, Tech Authority Andy Ihnatko. You can follow Andy on social platforms at IHNATKO. Andy, it's great to see you.
Great to be here, guys.
Thanks.
So, Andy, as you said to us in your memo, people probably know the TikTok ban could happen very, very soon. So what does that mean, and what can people do, particularly people that are very attached or even run their businesses off TikTok? What can people do?
Not very much, except wait and see. There are two outs that are possible. Actually, three, if you go for the long game. The Supreme Court will rule today probably on whether they'll just say, no, this on First Amendment grounds, we're going to get rid of this law that Congress passed removing TikTok from the U.S. is not constitutional, so TikTok is off and free. The second possibility, Congressman Ed Markey introduced a bill saying that we'll give TikTok another 270 days to figure out how to avoid being shut down in the U.S. The law says that either they have to completely cease operations in the U.S. or sell themselves to a company that the U.S. approves of that is not based in China. Don't know if that's going to happen. The third possibility, as everything these days, what will Trump do? Trump does not have the ability to simply strike down a law from the U.S. Congress. What he could do if he wants to be coquettish is to simply order the Department of Justice not to enforce it. The enforcement portion of this is that any company that helps users access TikTok in the U.S. can be fined up to $5,000 per individual. So basically, he could just say, okay, the DOJ, we're not going to do that. So basically, it's on the law's there, but it's not effective. But it really does look like it's going to be shut down very soon. And at which point, unless you do something kind of crafty, you won't be able to access TikTok in the U.S.
I want to talk about that access issue. And by the way, when we all say very soon, Sunday is the day in the legislation, the day before the inauguration. And by the way, my view is the most likely option is Trump not being coquettish at all, but making an announcement that, because remember, he wanted the Supreme Court to pause their consideration. He'll say, I'm ordering Pam Bondi, my attorney general, not to enforce this thing. But I want to talk about the possible sale. There have been a lot of rumors that the guy who owns Twitter also might end up owning TikTok. What do you think of the prospects of Musk buying TikTok, and what would the implications of that be, Andy Ihnatko?
If he did it, it would be horrible. But I don't think it's going to happen. The big stumbling block is, ironically, the same reason why the law was enacted. The lawmakers believe that because TikTok is owned by a Chinese company, it's not a surveillance arm of the Chinese government, but it's owned by a Chinese company. Their argument is that they are subject to a state security law in China that basically says that any company operating in China, any company that's owned by Chinese people inside China, has to aid in state security operations or national emergency stuff if the government says so. So basically, the worry is that China could basically order TikTok, I want you to start surveilling the following 2,000 people. I want to know what their movements are. I also want to make sure that you're always promoting videos that say nice things about our operations in China, our operations in Taiwan. Now, that's the reason why this ban is in effect. Now, China is super, super upset. They're in a full diplomatic snit over this law. They explicitly believe that this is the U.S.'s interference in a Chinese company trying to buy them off and get rid of them on the cheap. And so China would have to approve of the sale by virtue of the fact that the TikTok algorithm is essentially a Chinese-developed intellectual property, and China has to approve the export of that transfer of Chinese intellectual property to an outside foreign company. So China could step in and put the kibosh on the whole thing. Elon Musk has a relationship with China. He sells a lot of Teslas there. So maybe if China decided that, okay, we're not going to win this one, let's at least get one of our quote friends unquote heading that company. It could happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, so speaking of happen, I have the app, and I assume there are only another 200 million Americans, give or take a few, who have the app. What happens Sunday when they, quote, are shut down, if they are, to me? Can I view videos? Can I not? What happens?
Unknown. They've been one of the problems with the law is that it's a little bit vague. What's known for sure is that you will not be able to download the app from the iPhone App Store or the Google App Store. It is likely that access within the United States will be shut down because ISPs, internet service providers, are probably going to decide that if we allow connection to TikTok's domain through our borders, then we are complicit and we would be subject to a $5,000 fine. However, if you wanted to still be participating in TikTok, you could use a VPN, a virtual private network. This is a security app that you can put on your phone that's good for a lot of reasons, but one of the things you can do about it is to essentially fake in a totally legal and secure way your location so that TikTok doesn't think that your ISP doesn't know you're connected to TikTok because your connection is secure. TikTok doesn't know you're connecting from the United States. You can basically configure this app, say, "Hi, I want my connection to the internet through this phone to come through one of those VPN servers in Canada." Suddenly, you're a Canadian user, and fine, great, you'll be able to use TikTok. All this is unknown. We'll know in a couple of days. The shutdown will be immediate on the 19th or the 20th, as soon as we come back from holiday, because that's when it's supposed to go into effect.
So I think my last question. So if I use that technique, the VPN thing you're talking about a minute ago, or any other circuitous route to continue using TikTok, am I violating the law?
No, users are not punished for this law. It's not illegal to use TikTok. You're only punished for helping somebody else connect to it. So that would be, again, an app store, an ISP, that kind of thing.
You know, I should have asked you this before I said one more question. How do you feel about this law that is likely to shut them down? You're a big free speech guy. The Supreme Court seems to care more in their oral argument about national security than the free speech argument. Where are you on this?
The thing is, I agree with the logic behind the law. However, if you're going to shut down an app that provides information, social networks, entertainment, news to 170 million people in the U.S., an app that's, according to one auditor, contributed $24 billion to the U.S. economy in 2023, you're going to have to say, as the government, we're not just worried about it, here is evidence we have found. I think it's a very, very strange thing to simply say that this means of communication, this means of being part of a community is no longer legal to participate in. That's a very, very bad precedent. It would mean that let's say that we are living under a dictatorship in about 10 years' time. That means that any social network or any email service, anything that is not complying to the censorship or the propaganda of a central government could be shut down and simply said to be against the United States interest. That's not unlike what actually happens, ironically enough, in China. The reason why you cannot access foreign social networks is that they do not serve the interests of the Chinese Party, Communist Party. So we don't want to be involved in that. I'm opposed to this law, and I have no idea how they're going to enforce this.
Okay, I've said to you 4 times. One last question. This really is the one last question. If the Supreme Court rules in favor of the shutdown law, let's say today, and Donald Trump makes a statement on Truth Social an hour later saying what we talked about before, I will guarantee that my Department of Justice will not prosecute anybody, not just individuals, Apple, any of the app stores, any people, the ISPs, whatever, would the shutdown still happen on Sunday or Monday?
Yes, Apple and Google almost certainly will comply with the law immediately.
Okay.
But again, that's still 170 million people in the U.S. who already have the app on their phones. This is why I don't know why you would suddenly get a bug in your ear to have the TikTok app on your phone so that you could use it sometime in the future. But sometime before Monday, if you think that you would ever like to do that and you're okay with putting another privacy-violating social media app on your phone, this weekend would be a good time, your last chance to get the TikTok app easily.
Let me ask you another question. If you have it on your phone already, as millions and millions of people do, and you rush to get it on your phone before this is banned, why won't things just continue, if not hugely, but they'll continue to some degree as before?
What your internet service provider, whether it's your phone broadband provider, your home broadband provider, anything, they could decide to be very, very careful and say, we are going to block all traffic to the TikTok domain. And
so
that's something they're capable of doing. And we don't know what's going to happen. Again, we will know on Tuesday when this gets completely in effect. I think that a lot of people are going to be cautious. They're going to wait for guidance from the new Department of Justice to find out what their liability actually is. Apple and Google, however, have already been cautioned by the Department of Justice that we fully expect you to remove this app from your app stores on January 19th or 20th.
You know, let me say, I don't know if I've told you this. For people who have never seen me, just listen to the radio, I'm not 27 years old.
No.
Having said that, about a month ago, when 2 months ago, when Congress started legislating on this front, I started looking at TikTok more than I ever had. The addictive nature of this, even to, let's call them older Americans, is stunning. The inability to shut the damn thing off.
That's another
is
thing.
Almost.
Is it any more addictive than Instagram? I mean, is it?
No.
Yeah, I mean, they're both.
As a matter of fact, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, they're already being sued by many states attorneys general for exactly this reason, that they're making this app too addictive. As a matter of fact, they argued in TikTok actually argued in court last week that, look, it's not a bad thing that our users love our app so much that they keep wanting to use it. At which point the prosecutor would say, yeah, here's everything you're doing to, it's like being a casino operator. There are things that you do to put the user's mind into a sort of fugue state and make sure they don't appreciate how much time they're spending in the app. That's another good topic for discussion about whether or not there should be laws against that or not.
All right, do you have one more final question,
No, I don't.
Jim?
I want to move here. I want to talk about the guy who Sue O'Connell said she could beat the crap out of if there was ever just the two of them, Mark Zuckerberg. Here he is on a video posted on Facebook announcing several new policies to, quote, restore free expression on the platform. I bet you Andy loves these. Here's what he said about getting rid of fact checkers.
After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
Oh, they cut out the last thing he said. Is that okay, Donald Trump? Okay, so you can, the list, DEI, fact-checking, hate speech, start with whatever you want. Maybe start with fact-checking. How concerned should we be about the announcement on fact-checking, Andy Ihnatko?
Very, very, very. The policies that Zuckerberg is enacting, and this is pretty much just his pet project, it's not something that the entire company really thought about, are broad, they're sweeping, they're fundamental. One, as you heard him say, they are essentially removing almost all fact-checking. The only things that are going to stay in place are fact-checking for things like election interference, like the most severe things. Everything else, there's a process by which either an automated AI system or some sort of a distant early warning system, for lack of a better word, flags a news story as this is problematic, and then it gets kicked over to an outside company based in whatever country that Facebook is operating in there, that actually does fact checking, and they're not biased because there are hundreds of these companies. It's not that's kind of a lie, and also they're part of there's actually an industry consortium for fact checkers that back each other up and can basically police each other. So that's absolutely nuts. And usually what would happen is that if the fact checker says, no, this is baloney, this did not happen, even then it would not be removed by Facebook. It's just that whatever the algorithm does to favor certain stories that allows them to become viral, they won't get benefit of that. So people will still be able to share it, they'll be able to read it, they'll be able to find it, but it won't be like pushed out to hundreds of millions of people because they had an interest in chicken sandwiches or anything like that. So basically what he's doing is saying that all the fact checking is now the rubric of the actual users. They're going to have to they're basically, if you see something on Facebook that's factually wrong, you can add a community note that says, hey, this is factually wrong and here's how it goes. That's actually a very interesting idea. It's been used on Twitter, often to Elon Musk's detriment, which is one good reason to say that why this idea has legs. But you need fact checking. You cannot allow bad information to become viral. I'm not talking about controversial stuff. I'm talking about, hey, drink this floor wax, it cures the hiccups. Like, no. That's not a matter of opinion. That's a matter of fact, and it can hurt people.
So before you get to the hate speech element and hopefully share with us what would be permissible under the change, in your estimation, is all of this, the DEI stuff, which we have discussed this week, the hate speech, the absence of essentially the absence of fact checking, is this all kowtowing to Donald Trump? Is that the motivation here?
It's definitely partly that. Also, Zuckerberg, he is a very reactive sort of CEO. He doesn't come up with a 5-year plan and then enact things on that plan. He tends to react to things a lot, and because he has so much power, he can basically make things happen. This is why this thing happens. He's very, very upset that during the Biden administration, Facebook, as well as other companies, but Facebook is what he's talking about, he believes was made to suffer. He was made to always be answering complaints from the government about how they promote certain content and not others, how they were acting during COVID. He didn't appreciate that. He gave an interview with Joe Rogan that I was forced to listen to from start to finish, and he really feels as though, oh gosh, I was just when I think there's actually a quote that, what do you do when they hate you and they hate you for not doing what you want, and therefore they have to punish you. And basically what he's talking about is the aftermath of the 2016 election, in which a bipartisan Senate security panel basically said, was there Russian interference in the election, attempts to manipulate the election? Yes, absolutely so. What were social media companies doing to prevent this? The answer, not enough. And every company, including Facebook, again, making sure that they were not going to get legislated into oblivion, said, here's the billions of dollars we're going to spend to make sure that we are on top of this better. We want to make sure also that we are controlling harmful content and hate speech. Both the left and the right are both kind of on the back of these companies, saying, mostly the right saying, you're censoring conservative speech, so you're doing too much censorship. The left mostly saying you shouldn't be including content that might cause people to harm themselves or might be considered offensive. There has to be a middle ground, but Zuckerberg doesn't see it. So it's not that. The second thing, though, is that he is absolutely, like most tech CEOs, super excited about Donald Trump being in office, because Facebook is not only facing lawsuits from the DOJ and other entities for antitrust, they're also getting billions of dollars in fines from the EU and other foreign nations for violating laws that are applicable inside the EU. Their belief is that with Trump in the Oval Office, Trump can basically use diplomatic pressure, economic pressure, who knows, military pressure, to tell the EU, yeah, cute laws about the responsibilities of social media companies. We love them. That's adorable. They don't apply to anybody in the U.S. If you try to apply a fine, we're going to make sure that you're going to wish you hadn't done it. And we're basically going to tell all of these CEOs that they don't have to stick with your laws at all. That is almost literally what's happening here. He said almost exactly as much during the Rogan interview. He feels as though the government should not be putting obligations on Facebook to control hate speech, to control disinformation. They should be on the side of Facebook and defending it against these foreign threats. So that's pretty much why he's doing this.
It's interesting
interesting
how Silicon Valley has done almost a complete 180. They used to be so many Democrats. They used to be on that side, and now it seems like they have.
It's where the money is.
Where the money is, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Andy, you only have 30 seconds, but very quick question. We all know that anywhere from 250,000 to 300,000 people ended their subscription to the Washington Post after Bezos killed the Kamala Harris editorial. Do people leave things like Facebook and Twitter when they're upset by what the leadership is doing quickly, if you can, or is it just rhetoric?
No, a lot of people are leaving. One of the things that a lot of people inside Meta have been leaking information about these new moderation policies. For instance, a phrase like a trans woman isn't a woman, it's a pathetic, confused man, unquote, as part of the training materials is perfectly okay and not hate speech. And that's causing a lot of people to leave Meta, leave Facebook, leave Instagram, leave Threads. I myself, having seen so many posts on Instagram from trans and gay friends of mine saying that this is no longer a safe space for me. I have to leave, not because I'm offended by what Zuckerberg is doing, but because this is not a safe place for me to exist. It honestly has got me thinking very, very hard about my complicity, my ethical dilemmas in continuing to create content for these platforms. I would hate to leave them, and I'm going to struggle with this for a while, but it's a problem.
May there be more people like you. Andy Ihnatko, that was great. Thank you so much for your
Thanks,
time.
guys.
We really
Thank you,
appreciate
Andy.
it.
We've been speaking with Andy Ihnatko. You can follow him on social platforms at Ihnatko. I'll spell it for you. I-H as in Hank, N as in Nancy, A-T-K-O, Ihnatko. Coming up after a quick break. Okay, apparently we ripped off Fox News, and some of you got your panties in a bunch on our text line. Okay, so we're changing it. One more thing is now two more things. Somebody asked before if the text prompt voting on who's one more thing we like better is a text prompt for today, Jim. But we have no text prompt. It's just one more thing or two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on YouTube.com/GBH News.
from the highlights of 2024.
Passing the Affordable Homes Act, a $5 billion law that I proposed and signed that's going to create more housing.
To what's on the agenda for 2025.
We've got to do better in terms of transportation.
Governor Healy lays out the state of the Commonwealth.
The true strength of this great state is our people.
Listen live tomorrow night starting at 7 on GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com. And Safety Insurance, offering auto insurance policies designed to help for when the worst happens. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Bradley, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. For the next few minutes before Henry's 1 o'clock news, we're trying something new. We started yesterday, dedicating some time to talk about news stories or things in our world that Margie and I wanted to highlight, but we really didn't have a place in the rest of the show to do. As she said, we called it One More Thing yesterday, but we learned that was the name of a segment on the odious Fox News. So here it is, Boston Public Radio's Two More Things.
That's
one
correct.
From you, one from me. Take it away, Marjorie.
Well, I am so happy that former First Lady Michelle Obama is not going to be showing up at Donald Trump's inauguration next week. They didn't really give an explanation, but we can guess. She didn't show up at the funeral of Jimmy Carter because if she had, she would have been stationed right next to Donald Trump's protocol called for. So instead, her husband showed up and he was schmoozing with Trump, or Trump was talking in Obama's ear the whole time. But you may recall in Michelle Obama's great book, which is really, it's so much better than I thought it would be. I listened to her on audiobooks, even read it. It's so uplifting and it's so real. But she talked about how Trump's false birther conspiracy theory put her family in terrible danger. I mean, obviously she thinks she's a terrible racist, is shocked that, somebody could be really as smart as she is and her husband and as educated and be black. I mean, that's basically what she said, the racism there. In November, last November, right before the election, he asked if he was allowed to hit her now after claiming the former First Lady had hit him by criticizing him. So he's just been unbelievably nasty to her. So she's the real deal. Good for her. I'm glad she didn't show up.
Well, this is an extension of what that great speech she gave at the DNC. Here's some of what she said at the DNC.
For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black.
That was fabulous. And I'm with you. I think it's terrific. And by the way, in all fairness, don't trash Obama. I think he's basically saying this is the tradition to, peaceful transition of power. Now, your story was important, but with all due respect, not nearly as important as mine.
Jim, take it away.
This is something that caused me great frustration and sadness, actually.
Really?
And it is something that I have been, I think, pursuing for much of my adult life. But it came to a head the other day when I was on TikTok, as a matter of fact, and I heard about this wonderful way where you can more easily peel a hard-boiled egg. Here it is.
Add a lime or lemon slice to your boiling water when making boiled eggs. And watch the shells slide right off. So fancy.
Okay, watch the shells slide right off or not. Okay, so I boiled I love hard-boiled eggs, as you do, by the way. I put a slice of lemon in that baby. I took them out, put them in an ice bath. That's the other thing you're supposed to do. Immediately submerge them in cold water. And I tried to take the piece off, thinking it'd come off in 2 pieces, 200 pieces. That didn't work. Here's what I've tried in my life. What did you suggest to me this morning?
You put them on the counter and roll them back and forth.
I've done that. You roll them back and forth, they crack. That doesn't work either.
Actually, it does work, Jim.
Okay, and what they also say is older eggs. Who wants to boil an older egg? If it's older, theoretically, the shell will separate from the whatever. So what I'm basically doing is reaching out to our listeners, asking them if they have a hack, and don't give me the citrus thing, that would allow me to more easily peel my hard-boiled eggs. I would be forever beholden.
Wow.
That was pretty deep, wasn't it?
I'm thinking of you, Jim, struggling away with those hard-boiled eggs in the kitchen.
Thank you. By the way, it's been decades I've been working on this with no satisfaction.
Well, keep trying. I'm
going to
sure
keep trying.
You'll get there.
I will. Thank you.
Right after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by Boston Globe advice columnist Meredith Goldstein in our podcast at New Season. And what to do about that serial interrupter in your life. We're listening
from you. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, committed to the circular economy for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at FurnitureConsignment.com. And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting healthcare for cancer, sickle cell, and beyond at bmc.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We'll talk with Boston Globe love letters columnist Meredith Goldstein about what to do when your partner dives headfirst down conspiracy theory rabbit holes. They say love conquers all, but what if they won't stop sending videos about aliens building the pyramids?
I'm Margie Reed, and then we'll open up the phone and text lines 5 days out from Trump's second inauguration. What does it take to make romance bridge the political divide now? What about family and friends? Are you loosening the rules for the second time around? Maybe re-embracing those on the other side of
ceasefire deal? The agreement toward ending the war, which began October 7, 2023, is intended to happen in phases. In the first, Hamas promises to release 33 Israeli hostages in exchange for the freedom of many more Palestinian prisoners in Israeli custody. Adi Alexander's son Eidan was among those taken hostage. He spoke to NPR about the timing of the deal days before President-elect Donald Trump takes office.
Trump says that publicly and openly. He doesn't want this war to land on his plate on January 20th. That was a clear message to all parties, including Israel. And all the latest statement, they indicate that he will be tough with the friends and with the enemies. And we really happy about those statements.
The agreement follows weeks of intensive indirect negotiations involving envoys from both President Biden's administration and President-elect Trump's team. The talks were held in Qatar. Trump's pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi is answering questions from senators in her confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill. Bondi says the Justice Department must be independent and that politics will not play a role. Here's NPR's Ryan Lucas.
Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee say Pam Bondi is highly qualified to lead the Justice Department. They are touting her long career as a local prosecutor in Florida, as well as her 8-year stint as the state's Attorney General. Democrats, however, have pressed Bondi on whether she will maintain the department's independence from the White House. Under questioning, Bondi has said the department must act independently, but she argued, echoing committee Republicans, that the department unfairly targeted Donald Trump with 2 prosecutions, and she pledged that she will end what she called the weaponization of the department if she's confirmed as Attorney General. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
A new NPR PBS News Marist poll out today finds that Americans have mixed feelings about some of Trump's priorities. NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports the findings come a few days before Trump is inaugurated for a second time.
Trump has said he wants to pardon January 6 defendants, impose tariffs on other countries, and conduct mass deportations of immigrants in the U.S. without legal status. But the NPR poll of almost 1,400 adults doesn't find a lot of support for those initiatives. More than 6 in 10 disapprove of Trump potentially pardoning people who were convicted of attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. When it comes to tariffs, 48% think that they'd hurt the U.S. economy, while only 31% say that they think they'd help. And on deportations, people are evenly split. The survey has about a 3 percentage point margin of error. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 652 points, or 1.5%. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Some Western Mass farms say new cuts in the state program that helps low-income customers buy fresh produce is creating a financial crisis. We have more from Karen Brown.
Before the cuts, families with SNAP food benefits would get between $40 and $80 per month for fresh produce. But now the limit for the Healthy Incentives Program, or HIP, is $20 a month. Ryan Voiland is co-owner of Red Fire Farm in Granby.
It's
pretty much proving to be as we feared. Our sales have dropped off dramatically at our winter farmers markets.
Voiland says Red Fire was already reeling from a fire last year and rising minimum wage costs. Without a reversal of the hip cuts, he says the business will need to make some tough decisions. State Senator Joe Comerford of Northampton says legislators will consider adding more money for HIP, but have to wait for the governor's next supplemental budget. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Karen Brown.
A new emergency shelter has been opened in Springfield, Mass. as an incentive to get unhoused people off the streets during these bitterly cold days and nights. According to Mass Live, all of the 225 emergency shelter beds in Springfield have been full, so the city put out a call to any nonprofits, churches, and others for help. And with the help from Catholic Charities, the United Way, and $80,000 in federal pandemic recovery money, Wesley United Methodist Church immediately stepped up, and a new shelter was set up within less than a week. Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno was on hand for the official opening of the 25-bed shelter yesterday. 29 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yegan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by Chuck Todd for his analysis of what's going to happen when Donald Trump is back in office, Andrea Cabral, former sheriff of Suffolk County, Bill McKibben on the fires out in California and climate change. We will be back here on Friday with live music and State Auditor Diana DeZoglio. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. By the way, we apparently are being flooded by people who are telling me how to crack a hard-boiled egg easily. We will share some of those with you tomorrow, so keep them coming at whatever that number is, 877-301-8970. We're joined now by a very good doobie from the Boston Globe, whose knit cap says B, as in Boston Globe, 150 is 150 years. You going to get a raise for this?
It's the best swag I've ever received from the Globe. Winter hats that I can actually use. So
That's
yes, I'm representing.
That'd be Meredith Goldstein, author of the Boston Globe's Love Letters column and host of the Love Letters podcast. Just launched its latest season. We'll talk about that. Available wherever you listen to podcasts. Meredith, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
You're okay, right? Your voice
I'm
is...
totally fine. I've noticed that every January I lose my voice for 2 weeks. I think it's heaters. I will also say I recently did a story about interrupting, and I confess that I'm a bad interrupter, and I think I might be getting punished.
Be still my heart.
Okay.
That is so
now
great
I can't
to hear.
interrupt.
You know, as long as you brought that up,
yes.
Why don't we start there? We'll get
Okay.
to your new
Okay.
podcast season in just a second, but because someone I know interrupts from time to time, we had a talker on this subject.
We did?
Yes, we did. And how'd it go, Jim?
I think most people think you should stop interrupting me. Is what wasn't unanimous. I think it was most people saying, "Enough, Marjorie. Let the guy talk."
But obviously, you're not a man. I mean, I would blame men
You're not
for
a
being
man,
big
that's right.
interrupters, but you're not, and you confess you're an interrupter as well. So why do people interrupt?
I really wanted to get to the bottom of why we interrupt, because I feel like I'm bad at it, other people are bad at it, and I'm getting worse. And what's interesting is if you Google gender and interrupting, they'll talk about men interrupting women at work. I believe this happens. It's happened to me. But there's another kind, which is a bunch of very caring, well-intentioned people, often women, who are so invested, they're jumping into each other's sentences. They're guessing the end of the sentences. So one could say there's like kind of a good kind and a bad kind. I mean, that's what I would say, which is it just putting the focus back on yourself, changing the subject, or is it, oh, I'm so into what you're saying, I'm guessing the end of your sentence? It's still annoying, even if the intentions are good. So I was trying to figure out ways to stop and just to find out why I'm like this now. I don't think I was like this in 2019.
Why are you like this now?
Well, I think one is Zoom. You know, no one knows when to talk, and we're chatting.
Oh, that's a good point.
Layered text messages. We're used to interrupting each other in written messages. But then one person very delicately asked me an important question. She said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 47. Why? And she said, well, when you hit a certain age, sometimes you yell your thought because you're so afraid to lose it. Is it possible you're interrupting because you are deeply in perimenopause and 47 and a woman and just aging and you don't want to forget? And I was like, oh my gosh, I always forget I'm like, why did I bring this up? What was the story? So some of it is, I'm not trying to be rude, I just don't want to forget. And a Harvard Business School professor said to me, the trick is you put a notebook under the Zoom.
That was the most ridiculous
Really?
thing I ever heard in my life. You had 5 tips. Instead of saying what you're thinking, you write it down.
But then you don't forget.
Exactly.
This is for the forgetful, right? But it's also, one of the people said you put yourself on mute. That way, even if you yell into the void, you can decide, is it really worth the unmute? And I think it's also just practice. I've been really trying, with the exception of here, to keep it in, wait, let somebody finish a sentence, and they start to mirror my behavior.
Now, I know this is going to sound defensive because on 1 or 2 occasions I have been accused of interrupting Marjorie. It is always to enhance the discussion. It is never to change the topic. Normal conversation in my lifetime, from growing up with a single mother in my house when I was a little boy, to all my years, to my relationships, to my family, I've been engaged in conversations that are free-flowing, that move fast for the most part. Those are the ones I like the most. And often everybody's talking. And I know it's not great, but I really, this is the defense. I don't mean it disrespectfully at all. I feel engaged in what we're talking about.
And I think that's okay. I mean, geography has something to do with this. If we go to the Midwest, it's going to be a slower, perhaps more polite conversation. Also, culturally, one of the linguists I spoke to said, well, back in the day when we studied Jewish people in New York, there was a lot of overlapping. And I was like,
I
love it. Jewish people from New York.
I was like raised by those overlappers, right? So the question is, what is your baseline normal? And then has it gotten much worse from there, I think?
Culturally, I think that's a big thing, too, because I remember when I was in college, I had a boyfriend that was from Hawaii, and he would say, hey, how's it? How's those gnarly waves? And I'd think, would you spit it out and just say, and I think, maybe because it's hot and beautiful in Hawaii, maybe I've never been to Hawaii, maybe that's the way people talk all the time, but there is a big East Coast versus West Coast thing. It's huge, don't you think?
We move fast, and I think also, I talk about this in the story, but there's a lot of anxiety too.
Yeah.
So it's we are all leaning forward on a Zoom trying to get the next statement out. So it was a really interesting story to do, and it just made me, you think about first dates, right? From the love letters perspective, it's not fun to be interrupted, right, on a date. So how can we get, even if it's 5% better?
Okay.
It was a great piece, and by the way, it provided a lot of cover for me once you admitted you are an interrupter. We're talking to Meredith Goldstein from the Boston Globe. The podcast, the first episode dropped of the new season.
Yes.
It's about can people change? And the takeaway I had, and I assume this is accurate, is if you want to change, become a clown.
Become a clown.
Is that what you're saying?
The first episode of the Love Letters podcast for this season is about a young woman who is just caught in fight or flight mode after caregiving for a parent. She can't relax. She can't even date. She's like always unfocused. This is, for caregivers, this is a common feeling of waiting for the next tragedy. And she takes a clown class, and it completely rewires her. So, yeah, should we all take a clown class? I happen to think there are other ways to achieve this. Like, it might be knitting. It might be any activity that pulls you out and forces you to be present. So we're going to have...
That is not part of your usual deal.
That's not part of your usual deal. And, my cousins tell me that's why they do rock climbing, because they have to focus on the rock. Otherwise, they get hurt. So something that takes 100% of your mind power.
This is your 10th season, by the way?
Yes, we have shorter seasons, but this whole 10th season, I'm really in love with it. I learned so much about how to change for the better and how it's okay to sometimes not change for the better.
Well, let's play a little clip. In rock climbing, I think, could be the ticket, Jim.
Oh, yeah, I'll be doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, this clip from the first episode of the 10th season of Love Letters.
It's not that funny, Jamie. It wasn't that funny.
This is about the woman in the clown class. Here it is.
I matched with this guy.
The guy asks a nice question. What's bringing you joy lately?
And I go, clown, and I start telling him about clown, and he's like, wow, that's so interesting. I'd love to be introduced to that world. I know a little bit about clown because I went to acting school. I was like, yeah, for sure.
Then the man tells Fumi something else about himself.
And he goes, I'm a mime. And I go, what? I went, do you want to get a drink tonight?
That's a fabulous clip. That is great.
Only in New York, right, where somebody gets online and they're a clown and they run into somebody who's trying to be a mime, right?
That is exactly right.
But so if we listen to the season, we will learn ways to change ourselves for the better.
Yes, through people's very personal stories, and I'm already changing for the better and knowing, again, when it's okay to just stop trying in certain areas of my life.
Can I just ask one question about that? I totally agree with the concept that you were laying out, as if you sort of go outside your normal, I hate the expression lane, but your normal lane and do something that occupies you that's different, it can spark change. But how do you get to the place where you take that chance? Do you know what I mean?
And it can be hard to, I mean, it really takes some initiative, and sometimes it takes community. Somebody saying, hey, you seem really stuck in it. Why don't we do this other thing? So I think especially if you have an anxious friend, you can say, what might take our minds off of this for an hour?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real gift we can give to each other.
Talking to Meredith Goldstein from the Boston Globe.
Okay, so let's talk about partners, even longtime partners apparently, who suddenly start believing in conspiracy theories, which I suspect is becoming more and more common.
This was a really difficult letter. I got a letter from somebody who said that their spouse started believing in a lot of conspiracy theories, things they were reading online. And I know you were just talking about facts unchecked. A lot of unchecked facts here. Can you salvage a marriage when the fundamental belief system is not shared? And the truth of it is, I'm not sure it can. And I've seen this, since 2016, right? Whether it's conspiracy theories, new political differences that maybe were always there or weren't there. Watching Fox News, these are things that are relationship enders for a lot of people. So it's a difficult thing to answer, because I never want to tell somebody, oh, this can get better. And what's interesting is when this column, this Q&A ran in the Globe, I got a lot of people saying, this happened to me, and other people saying, you should believe these conspiracy theories. What's wrong with you, Meredith? So it was revealing.
Can't believe Donald Trump reads your column. That's incredible. But I think you make this point. I don't know if you say it this way. You're married to somebody who is different from the person you married. I'm not saying it's not sad and not difficult, but I mean, that is the reality. This person is married to a different human
person.
being. Right.
And the way media has worked, the way social media has worked, a lot of people got roped into changing their ideals, their ideas, their beliefs, and it may not work anymore. I mean, I just never want anybody to stay in a bad situation that feels unsafe emotionally, unsafe physically, because they made a promise to a different person. There's a lot of grief involved, right? Not to be a bummer, but to grieve a relationship because of values that just radically changed.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about this. How would you be able to sit there and listen to someone who was talking about aliens building the pyramids?
Yeah, I mean,
that would be too much for me.
There's also sometimes even if you voted for different people and there are no conspiracy theories involved, there are small things you still share. A love of children, a love of helping the community. But this is tough.
We were going to ask you this at the end because it bleeds into what we're going to talk about. But since it so relates to this,
you should.
We have talked. You wrote a column, I think it was in June, where you were pretty heavy with this, not heavy in a bad way, but pretty heavy about somebody who was talking about, Trump person and the non-Trump person. We have taken calls since 2015 about this. Long-term relationships ended. We did it prior to this election. Same kind. My father doesn't talk to me anymore. I don't talk to my uncle, that sort of thing. However, the thing that Margie and I and Jamie and everybody were talking about this morning is this is different this time. CEOs, for example, who said we could never live with Donald Trump are now giving him money and going to the inauguration. Yep. University presidents are saying the same thing. Very anti-Trump politicians are saying we have to find common ground in places. So the question we wanted to ask you, and we'll ask our listeners later, is this all going to trickle down to relationships, to friendships, as well as dating kinds of things where, let's say, X number of years ago, someone would say, I'd never date a Trump person, I'd never date a Biden or a Harris person. Are we in a different acceptance phase kind of thing?
I don't know that we are. I think that even though we're having conversations about, we have to all learn how to talk to each other, and that's why I'm going, or that's why I'm engaging, right? And it makes our home life that much more sacred. Can we go home and be ourselves? So if you can't go home and be yourself, that's really hard. And if you have to do more work in the world to relate to people who feel differently to try to find common ground. I don't know about you, but when I go home, I just want to be seen and respected. So my thought is, you know, some of these people are making really hypocritical decisions and going where the money is and whatever. For some people, like, I honestly am open to the conversation about, well, how are we supposed to talk to people? How we have to figure this out, right? But for me, going home and watching TV with people who get it, that's going to remain a priority.
Yeah,
Fair
I
enough.
think
Well-
it would be really hard, but we interested to see what people say about it too, because I think the fact that if he got almost half the people in the country makes you think that there's a whole world out there.
And there's a difference, right? Some people value one part but not another. I mean, I know people who broke up because of Hillary and Bernie. I mean, these are hard things, but how much common ground do you have, I think, is a big question.
Well, by the way, I don't mean this as a criticism, but just to extend it of you. It has nothing to do with you, but just who is the most anti-Trump attorney general in the United States, would you argue? I would say it was Maura Healey.
Yeah.
She is
Maura
now
Healey,
the
our own
governor,
attorney
and one of her
general.
first comments,
Okay.
she actively supported Kamala Harris, Joe Biden before, said, I'm going to try, we'll fight where we have to, we'll try to find common ground. And the question I guess I have, which is untested, is when you admire a Maura Healey, or Andrea Campbell said similar things yesterday
She
too.
said the same thing.
Does that trickle down? Because in the days when everybody was saying, I'll never date a Trumper or I'd never date a Bidenite or whatever, the people you looked up to were in the same spot you were. Never Trumpers, never whatevers.
Yeah.
And that's muting in lots of places.
Well, and I don't know what the direct correlation is from there to your
No, I don't
partner,
know. I
right?
know.
But it does make you feel differently. But also, there's this question of, should I want my political leaders to engage and try to find a path or not? And I can't answer that question, but I think we hold our partners to different standards.
We're going to bring that to you guys in about 10 minutes.
So I read this one about divorce guilt, and it was so sad because the couple had been together for 15 years, and it wasn't anything, it wasn't somebody cheating or an alcoholic or anything. They just sort of drifted apart. And what did this person say?
Oh, so somebody wrote in and said they were very guilty, that they could not get their act together emotionally during their marriage. They get a divorce, they feel better, and now they're great for someone else. This was actually really validating because I think so many of us have breakups or divorce and watch a former partner be great with someone new.
Somebody else, right.
And we wonder, do they ever feel bad that they couldn't be that way for us? And apparently, according to this letter writer, they can feel very bad about it. So I just sort of, told them to forgive themselves, and sometimes timing is weird, and wondered why they're thinking about this now. Perhaps they miss their ex, but we can't always do the work at the exact right time.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like, that they missed the person they were with for 15 years, but they were almost a different person now post the divorce.
And maybe too fast to jump into a new relationship. That was what I wondered as well. But yeah.
Okay, so my favorite was, I think my daughter should date someone. The opening part of the paragraph, my 28-year-old daughter, this is the letter writer to Meredith, my 28-year-old daughter lives at home, is very single, an only child, does not make enough money to support herself. She's a therapist and sees clients one-on-one. She doesn't see very many. The reason I love this is because it's one of the great lines in the middle of this letter. This is the father, right? A father. She is a devout feminist. She can be quite negative when speaking of others. So is that his definition of a feminist, that they're quite negative?
Those sentences were like, it was very funny to me. I so felt for the child of this letter writer who was just trying to live her life. Yes, she's living at home, and maybe that could be remedied if she doesn't want to be there anymore. But, I mean, parents, give your kids a break. And this person's in her 20s. Like, this
28, almost in her 30s.
Yes, but, come on. Also to assume that what will bring your child happiness is romantic love right this second. It might have worked for you, but not for them. So I always say to parents, and I am not a parenting expert, nor am I a parent, but I am a single lady. Well, I'm not. I'm a coupled lady who is unmarried, right? Mm-hmm. And has been forever. Ask your kids what might make them happy. Don't assume and offer to spend a lot of money on a matchmaking service for them. It might make them feel like they're failing in a part of their lives that isn't important to them right now.
I know.
Yeah, and if somebody had looked at me in 28 and said, "Where's your partner? Can I get you a high-end matchmaking service?" I would have laughed at them. I would have laughed at them and had a sparkling wine.
Okay, so we both do have kids.
Yes.
All 5. You have 3, I have 2, all in their 30s. I know there are times when you feel like this father, I know better for what my kid should do than he or she knows. Have you ever had those moments?
I have sometimes expressed those feelings and been thoroughly dismissed.
Oh, but you
and
do
unlistened
express
to.
them.
Rarely, because I figure I wait to be asked. Kind of, they're grown-ups.
Yeah,
you know?
my sister and I always joke that we were raised in a house where no one said, when are you going to get married? and when she was in her late 30s, she said, you know what, maybe they should have. Like, we had so little pressure, we forgot to do it.
Yeah. What do? Do you offer advice unsolicited?
I write a note and put it under the computer. No, it is really hard for me, but I do. I really, really, really hard. And both my kids are smart and have really, I think, pretty sound judgment. But obviously there are times when you feel you know better for them than they know for them. And it is insanely difficult, but 99 times out of 100, I keep my mouth shut, which I know is really hard to believe, knowing me as you do, but I do.
No, I gave a lot of advice in one situation, and it was thoroughly ignored.
I mean, I think you also got to look, does my kid have friends? Does my kid have hobbies?
Yeah.
Is my kid happy for the most part? Like, it's not just one thing.
Well, also, if they ask for it, obviously,
If they ask for it, it's different.
Let it roll kind of thing.
I tell you one thing I've learned as a grandmother, though, just shut up. Just shut up.
Oh, about parenting?
About parenting or about the children or anything else, because everything changes so much between, the 20 years between the time you had kids and they have kids, all the ideas, do you put them on their back, their side, their belly? I mean, everything changes every 5 minutes. So if you had kids 20 or 30 years ago, basically thinking is you don't know what you're talking about, so just shut up.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I want to know about ghosting. We hear this about a lot. People get involved in relationships and then somebody disappears. This person was only after 5 weeks, but I would guess there is no time. You could get ghosted after 5 years.
Oh, so yes, you could. I mean, it's not nice to ghost anybody ever, but definitely not after 5 years. But I think you might be referring to a letter from someone who was broken up with and ghosted during a really difficult time, that he had lost a parent, and the person he was dating kind of just was like, bye, but didn't really say a good goodbye. And the truth is, like, the way this person was broken up with was not very respectful. But it brought up a good question. Is there a good time to get dumped?
Yeah.
I've had so many people say, oh, but it was around the holidays, or oh, but it was around the death of a loved one. And like, when is a good time? I've never been dumped and thought, today was a good day for that. This feels good on this Wednesday. No, you don't want that.
And the writer was a guy, I can't remember.
Yeah, I believe so. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. We're going to say.
No, I was just going to say that I've talked to a lot of people about how they look back and say, thank goodness they broke up with me, so they weren't part of my healing process. If you lose a parent and your wonderful partner's there and then they break up with you, that's not great either.
And one of the points that was emphasized is to say we were so close is she was about to bring her cat over to meet my cat.
Oh. Yeah.
How many people do that? I mean, how many people
I am, as
who
an
are not moving in about to bring a cat over to meet a cat?
Listen, as an allergy girl, the pet thing is I always assume it's more important than I'll ever know. Because, I love dogs, I love cats, I can't go anywhere near most of them, but I'm always like, oh, can you date someone who despises your animal? It's like despising your kid. So I'm assuming introduction of cats.
I think the answer is no. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do have to get the cats and dogs together, though, if you're going to move in and see what happens.
But you bring the cat over to somebody, you're not moving in, you're dating?
Cats don't seem that portable, but what do I know?
Yeah, I thought that was the reason they were introducing the cats, because they were anticipating maybe together.
Yes. Okay.
But I don't know. Maybe I was wrong.
Yes.
Maybe I was wrong. They were rushing in after only 5 weeks. So the new podcast is all about how if you can change and people who have changed.
Yes.
Or not changed.
It's all pretty uplifting.
Oh, good.
It's love letters wherever you get podcasts, and I'm pretty into it this season.
When do these things drop, by the way?
Every other Tuesday.
Every other Tuesday.
Okay. And will I be able to change something that bothers me by the end of the season?
Yes.
Thank you.
Will she be able to change something that bothers her about me by the end of the season?
I mean, maybe something about interrupting.
Oh, maybe.
To bring it full circle.
All right. We've been speaking with Boston Globe
Thanks so much.
advice columnist Meredith Goldstein. She is the author of Love Letters, and you can find her Love Letters podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and you can read her Love Letters columns in the Boston Globe, and I'm a huge fan, because she also not only gives her advice, but other readers give their advice too, which I love that. Anyway, coming up after a quick break, we're going to open the lines to ask you about something we talked to Meredith about dating across the political divide. It was kind of a no-no in the first term of Trump, but we're wondering, since the country is split 50-50 in this election cycle, It may increase your numbers if you're willing to walk across the political aisle to increase your chances of a love connection. Do you feel differently about making that walk across the aisle on Trump Part 2? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 G.
I'm Arun Rolfe. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Needham residents rejected a plan to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. We'll look at what's next. The first non-binary elected official in the state, a Worcester city councilor, is going on leave over claims they've been the target of transphobia. And we'll dive into MIT's annual Breakthrough Technology List, the tech advances to keep an eye on in 2025. That's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting Jad Abumrad's How to Talk to a Human, live at Sanders Theater on Friday, January 31st. In his new show, the Radiolab creator explores the art of human connection. CelebritySeries.org. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit ComcastBusiness.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News tomorrow. Chuck Todd, Andrea Cabral, environmentalist Bill McKibben, talking about the fires in L.A. and what the future looks like come Monday. And back here Friday with live music and State Auditor Diana DeZoglio to give us a progress report or a no progress report. We'll see on her attempt that was endorsed by the voters to audit the legislature. I was going to give my introduction of what we're going to do, but you did it better. You've made the point that in the early days of Trump, it was a no-no, particularly for people who didn't like Trump, to date somebody who supported Trump, but it also went to a lesser degree in the other direction. Trump people didn't want anything to do with people who supported Biden, Harris, whoever it was, but it was mostly anti-Trump. And we want to know is a lot of things have changed, it seems to me, in terms of how people in high-profile places are reacting to Trump. We mentioned people like Maura Healey and Andrea Campbell, who are no fans of Trump, says they're going to try to find places where they can work together. We know we've talked a lot about university presidents, sycophantic CEOs who used to oppose him.
Yeah.
And we want to know if in your personal life, either dating, deep relationships, or just friendships, if you're going to be more tolerant of political differences between you, dramatic political differences than you were, let's say, X number of years ago. As Marjorie said, it was a no-no not too long ago. Is it a no-no anymore? 877-301-8970. What do you think? I mean, Meredith seemed to think, as a question of first impression for her, it's not going to change very much because at the end of the day, you want to go home with, literally or figuratively, somebody who provides you comfort and is in the same place as you. But there is a sea change in terms of how people who are never Trumpers in lots of ways are reacting to Trump second time around.
Well, I think maybe it all could come down to how you feel about the price of eggs, Jim. You can just focus the whole relationship on inflation at the grocery store. Can you agree that eggs are too expensive? We can't find enough eggs. What about the pasture-raised eggs?
What was Tim Shriver saying to us the other day from Unite, the dignity, whatever the hell it was?
He was talking about the dignity model. I have it in my purse.
You
because
do?
I'm trying to, where is it? I'm trying to follow the dignity model. But he was saying that we should listen to each other. Basically, that was the big thing, that we should, every one of us is born with an inherent worth, so we should treat everyone with dignity, no matter what.
And don't be angry at the person. Be angry at what they believe, if you want, but not the person.
That's right. That everyone is a good person, or most of us are anyway. That we shouldn't think of people who disagree with us politically as evil and even subhuman, and that we have to destroy these people. That we should be respectful and treat everyone with dignity. And you should be respectful and treat everyone with dignity. But I don't know. I think it's a hard sell. I think for young women particularly, because I think that there's a lot of problems for young women with Trump policies.
Yeah.
But listen, I could be wrong. I mean, there's also a sense, half the country thinks this is fine. Bring down the price of eggs and close the border, and maybe we can agree on disagree on other
by the way,
stuff.
the reason I think it may be different, I'm not sure, I have no idea, is not because half the country almost voted for him. It's because of the people who didn't vote for him in high places who are saying we'll try to work together, or much more than that. Those are some elected officials who, by the way, I'm not criticizing them. They have a responsibility to do the best they can for their constituents. The guy is going to be the president. But the university presidents, so we talked to Khalil Gibran Muhammad about the other day.
know.
The CEOs who were on bended knee for this guy, does that trickle down and people say, well, maybe they used to hate this guy and what he stood for. Now they're not only tolerating, they're donating to him, they're going to his inauguration. Maybe I have to be, tolerant is not the right word. Well, maybe I have to be less rigid in terms of my relationships.
What it basically is, they've all abandoned their principles. Should I?
Well, I'm glad you said it. Margot in New Hampshire, you were first on Boston Public Radio. Thank you so much for the call. Hi.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're good. Thank you for calling.
So calling from Hancock.
We know. Oh, we love Hancock, as you well know.
I know you guys do.
We do.
So I kind of get the theory that people have to compromise and maybe, work with them on a certain level, but on a personal level, the short answer is no.
Yeah, I think it's hard.
Absolutely not.
You know what?
Yeah, you mean in your own situation? You're talking about yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And everyone I know, frankly, any whether it's a dating type situation, I have a lot of women friends that are single, as am I, and even in friendships, I've kind of closed the door on a friendship over this last election because. The other thing we're finding is people want to hide that they support Trump on the dating front.
Yeah.
And even friends, I mean, to ask a friend point blank, who did you vote for, and want to have a conversation, and they just won't even answer. I don't have any patience for it. I'm not going to capitulate.
You did Hancock proud. That was a great call to start this discussion, Margot. Good to talk to you. Say hi to our friends up there. Thank you so much for calling.
This past election made me question everything about my relationships with those who voted for Trump. I have decided to try and focus on things we have in common and weigh against my quote-unquote red line deal breakers. It's not easy, but it comes down to each individual.
Well, that is a little bit different from what we've heard
here's another one.
Through the years.
Here's Colin from Rhode Island. I'm in my late 20s. I find being a moderate makes it harder to connect with either side in any level of relationship. I love people in both camps and find myself keeping my mouth shut more and more to, quote, keep the peace and avoid an argument that nobody wins.
But isn't that a horrible way to live? I mean, when we hear, it's one thing if you decide, we've had this discussion only for 10 years on this show, Thanksgiving, maybe you don't provoke a fight between your family members. That's one day, one afternoon, one night. It's really hard to swallow your thoughts in an ongoing kind of friendship or personal relationship.
Another texter says exactly that in a different way. I work all day having to be nice to people with differing political views. I do not want to have to do that at home.
Yeah.
So.
You know how different things are? I've told you the story before. I don't know if I've told it on the air. My mother, his best friend in the world, my mother was a big-time Democrat. On her wall, she had pictures of Martin Luther King, Jack Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy. She loved John Kennedy, and she had utter contempt for Richard Nixon. Her best friend in the world was a huge Richard Nixon supporter. And because it was a totally different time, they loved each other and did great.
Oh, it was totally different until Trump.
Yeah,
actually.
It really was. That's exactly right.
So here, listen to this from Mary in Nahant. My husband has watched, a lot of Fox News, and I feel that he's being brainwashed. We've started couples therapy in hopes of understanding each other better, but I can't help feel that our differences may be just too much. I'm hoping we can make it work.
Speaking of brainwashing, what's the name of that movie? The Brainwashing of My Dad? Is that what it's called?
I forget what it's called, but it's about the father that got brainwashed by Fox News, and the kid came home and he was absolutely horrified. His mild-mannered father, is screaming at the television set. All the neighbors are thinking, what's going on in there?
And wasn't he a moderate before?
He worked for like a big company.
Bank or something,
one of these big, what do you call the blue chip companies?
Yeah.
And was a regular guy, like what we used to talk about when Charlie Baker used to talk about how his mother was a Democrat, his father was a Republican, but they were both sort of middle of the road. Or George H.W. Bush, that was a Republican, small government, small taxes, but there wasn't all this stuff about culture wars. He was pro-choice. Barbara Bush was, actually, I don't know if H.W. Bush came out as pro-choice. Certainly Barbara Bush was his wife. But in any case, it was different, very different.
Darren in Boston, thank you for calling. Welcome.
Hey, I appreciate it. I have so many family and relationships that are based on, love and appreciation that view politics very different than me. And I don't want to do anything to damage the relationships, but I don't want to do anything that normalizes this presidency either. I can't do anything that acts like this is normal. So hopefully I can have those relationships without normalizing this behavior.
When you said, Darren, I don't want to do anything to damage the relationship, does that mean including saying how I really feel about something?
Yeah, and they know when they can and can't talk to me, and I don't fight. I don't view my role as to persuade them how to vote politically.
So do you, I'm not sure if you said this already, Darren, but do you just avoid politics altogether when you're with these people?
No, I'll let them decide how they want that conversation to go.
Okay.
But I'm not going to pretend that somehow this is a normal situation.
Okay, Darren, thank you for the call.
It.
I think a lot of people do avoid talking about politics when they have those situations in their life, but it's really hard if it's your spouse or your significant other.
He said it great, though. I agree with that. You don't want to normalize the behavior of...
Well, but that's what we're doing, isn't it? I mean, that's what these people...
If you swallow everything,
I guess, I know that Mark Zuckerberg has a lot of contracts with the government, and Bezos does, and Musk does, but Jesus, how much money do you need? And you would still have millions and millions, if not billions of dollars if you lose some of those contracts.
Still, yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's something about greed in the United States, I think, too, that's just gotten out of control. Dee in Andover, thank you for calling.
Hi, Dee.
Hi. I am a long-time listener and love you guys.
Thank you.
So I wanted to let you know that up here where I live, my neighbor across the street had invited me to a party, kind of mid-party. So instead of showing up with a bottle of wine, I showed up with edibles, as one does. And they introduced me as their liberal friend. So I ended up getting everyone quite stoned, and at the end of the night, talking to my friend who supports Trump, she and I started talking, and I told her I was reading the book by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, my own words, and told her about her friendship with Scalia.
Right.
And in that book, people had asked her, how can you be friends with him? How can you travel the world with him? And every New Year's Eve with him. Well, she says it's not the idea that it's really that's the person.
Yeah.
So it's not the idea that I don't agree with the politics with them, but they're wonderful people, and I remain friends with them, and we get together a lot, but we don't talk about politics.
You're quite a person, Dee. That was pretty great. Thank you for calling. We really we appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Well, I told you I have a good friend, actually, who lost a home in Florida where she moved to. But her next door neighbor was a QAnon person, and she didn't know the next door neighbor was a QAnon person until the person asked her how she was preparing for some QAnon event that was supposed to happen, if they needed food or water or something. And she said before this, they had a couple of neighborhood barbecues, and they shot the breeze, and they were having a couple of beers, and they were out making the hamburgers. And she said they really enjoyed the people, and they knew these people would help them out if they needed, they needed a generator or whatever it was. And she was, of course, stunned to find out that they believed in things like the child sex ring led by Hillary Clinton in the basement of that pizza joint in Washington, D.C.
Comet Ping Pong Pizza.
Exactly, but meanwhile, she's saying that they were such nice people. So, it's a reality people face. Ann in Worcester, hi.
Hello, Ann.
Hi. I just have two quick thoughts. Number one, I think a lot of people that are willing to call people nice people or whatever, it means their rights aren't being infringed, right? I mean, it means that their personal life isn't being hurt by Trump.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I have kids in the queer community, and they all say, you know what, Mom, your friends that are voted for him don't think I'm equal. And it's as simple as that. And I also told my husband of 40 years, who we've been pretty much aligned, that if he's changed and voted for Trump, I'm out of here. It was not even a question.
Believe me, I'm not laughing at you at all, Ann. That was great.
Yeah.
Ann, thank you very much.
Well,
as
that's
long
a
as you
great
put
point.
people on notice, I think you're good. Ann, thanks for the call.
If you're a member of the gay community, trans community, people of color community.
You voted against my kid. You voted against somebody I love.
Yeah, it makes it really difficult. That's, I think, why Michelle Obama is not going to the inauguration, because she thinks, I'm going to go there and sit next to this guy.
By the way, I'm really glad you did your little thing on whatever that new segment of ours is called. What is it called? Two people talking? What is it? What is it?
One more
two
thing.
more things.
Two more things.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I've pitched this a million times before. If you haven't read or listened to her book, it's really uplifting. It's really good. Jay from Waltham, thank you for calling. Especially when she complains about Obama. I love that part. How she's home, working like a dog.
Like our
and
husband,
he's running
Obama.
around, and how annoying he was to her and stuff. It's very funny.
I made a huge mistake. When I introduced this segment, I was talking about all the people who maybe you wouldn't have believed would have been so willing to be kind to Donald Trump, despite what used to be their differences. I, of course, should have mentioned the exception. The highest profile exception is Michelle Obama not going with her husband to the inauguration on Monday. That is
I think she thinks
an act of great principle, I would argue.
Well, when it comes to thinking he put your children in danger.
He did.
I get it.
Does
right?
anybody, by the way, you always talk about how a lot of the Trump people who are in denial, it's just because they don't believe it. They all heard Donald Trump do this birther stuff. Most of them have kids. They don't believe when Michelle Obama says, you put my children at great risk. They don't believe that? Or they don't give a damn?
I don't know.
Let's go to Jay in Waltham. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I completely understand the political differences here. I've actually had to cut family members that I had been close to at one point out of my life because, when they're around, they'll make bigoted statements and they haven't just drank the Kool-Aid, they've injected it. And for our own peace, we don't allow bigots in our home. I don't care who you are. Zero tolerance means exactly that.
I have to say that was another great call.
When somebody else said, similar things. Here's one. Unfortunately, every Trump supporter I know has also shared racist feelings with me, so no, won't be making any Trumpy friends. Caitlin from Clinton says this all boils down to tolerance, the tolerance paradox. If we tolerate the intolerable, it becomes normal and tolerable, and we can't do that. And here's another lovely text.
Jay, thanks for the call, by the way.
Listen to this one.
Yep.
I hope you liberals all die alone.
That's really nice.
We get a lot of those, Jim.
It's really nice. 877-301-8970. We started this by saying, as Marjorie said, a bunch of years ago when we talk about I was going to use the word mixing, the relationships, whether they're romantic relationships or friend relationships between people who are Trump supporters and people who are not Trump supporters. It was, for almost all the callers, a no-no, and we were wondering whether or not, as the atmosphere has changed with people in high places being much more respectful and apparently willing to work with or support Trump, if it's trickling down to real people's relationships, and most of you are saying no.
Mac in Rhode Island. Hi, Mac.
Hi, Mac.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much for taking my call. I love you guys. You have such great dynamics. But
You're terrific. Thanks.
I'm on, a number of dating apps, and I won't even swipe at all. Even if they're moderate, to me, that's a no. I am very left of progressive. Politics are very important. I heard a caller say that you can separate ideas from the person. I do not believe that.
Mac, we have to let you go only because your connection is horrible, but you mentioned dating apps. We read a story this morning that said a lot of very conservative men in particular who don't want to be ruled out by people like Mac in Rhode Island say they're moderates, which is sort of code for I'm not a moderate, but I'll fare better in the dating game.
No,
Mac, that was a great call. Sorry we had to let you go.
I've heard a couple of stories about young people I know going out to a date with a so-called moderate. Did not end well.
Like anybody you're close to?
Friends of people I'm close to.
Okay.
Yeah. Parker in Boston, thank you for calling.
Hello, Parker.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
Yeah, folks, the reality is, we have to build bridges, and the only way you do that is if you entertain discussions and conversations and meet people where they are. Growth doesn't happen overnight, and so it's alarming to see. I have a coworker. His wife literally cut out a bunch of family members because they voted for Trump. Just because you vote for somebody doesn't make you reprehensible. And in order to have the change management, the discussions necessary, you yourself have to have the distress tolerance to meet people where they are and help them cross that chasm of, understanding and intelligence. So keep the bridges, guys. Don't.
So hold on. So Parker, how do you do that? If you're having a conversation with someone that you disagree with and it's about something pretty serious, race, for example, how do you deal with that?
Stanford University has done research, and it's this technique called deep canvassing. And actually what it starts with is not trying to convince somebody, but rather just listen to them.
Yeah.
And in fact, most of the times when you allow people the ability to get their thoughts out, you don't have to agree with it, but the second that you start to disagree with someone, it puts up cognitive walls. But if you allow them to speak, it's like, how to win friends and influence people. People love talking about themselves. And just a lot of people think that if you put a bunch of ideas on one side of the scale, that it's automatically going to, of course, they're not stupid, that they're going to believe what I believe. But the fact is to meet people, you have to have them say what they say and build a dialogue. But just trying to force your opinion and not listen, you're not going to get anywhere.
By the way, almost every expert we've ever spoken to on the show says the more you try to change someone's opinion in that conversation you describe, the more dug in they get
That's right.
to theirs. Parker,
That's why
thanks for your perspective.
You just hang up.
So, no, by the way, it's interesting you say that. I was going to mention this. Marjorie is of the belief correct me if I'm wrong, when a Trump supporter calls or texts in, and we get a pretty decent number of texts and some calls, your position is just let them talk, like Parker said. I am fine with that unless the beginning of the conversation is riddled with factual inaccuracies so that their whole argument is... And by the way, if they're a Biden or Harris supporter, I feel the same way. If your argument is built upon things that are untrue, so you just let it go? Is that what you do?
Well,
and hear them out and...
Well, you could hear them out and then correct them when they're done, I guess. I mean, I'm always interested in why people do support him.
Well, you ask that often, and if people based on facts say they have a different opinion, whatever the issue is, I am totally fine with it by definition, but I'm not when it's built on things that simply are not factually real.
Here's a good one from Cece in Weymouth. She says part of Tim Shriver's point that we're missing is that liberals need to act with more dignity by being less condescending, feeling less superior, acting like they know everything, less insulting, that kind of thing.
Tim Shriver, by the way, if you weren't listening the other day, it's an organization called Unite, and the Dignity, what's the Dignity?
It's called the Dignity Index.
Yeah, he was on with us the other day talking about not so much in terms of Trump, dating and whatever, but about like what Parker was talking about a minute ago.
Yeah.
Just your interactions, your relations, breaking ice with people with whom you disagree.
It's a website called dignity.us.
Okay, let's go to Dave in a car. Hi, Dave.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
So it was a couple of years ago when Trump won last time, I called in and talked to you about my brothers who were basically they're Trumpers and that our relationship completely got lost. I was talking to you about my alcoholic brother who, incidentally, since then has tried to commit suicide by drinking himself to death about 5 or 6 times over the last 6 months.
Oh, Dave.
So anyway, besides that, I have learned that some of the coworkers and some of the people that I have worked with over the years that females that, women that I thought were respectable, great people are following some of these horrendous posts on Instagram, and I'm wondering how can they really be Trump fans when I've worked with them side by side and never would have seen that coming. And I try to keep an open mind. I try to say, if I went out to lunch with this person, I would be sitting across from her saying, what in the HELL is going through her mind right now? I can't fathom it. I really, after all these years of working with people, to find out that they're Trumpers is just unbelievable to me. I just can't figure it out.
So why do you have any inkling on why your brothers support him, Dave?
They just think that, it's all about the economy. It's all about health insurance. And incidentally, the oldest brother who was anti-system, anti-democracy, thinking about handouts, now that he's an alcoholic and going, in the system, he's on Obamacare. And he was the biggest, staunch Trumper that there was, and now he's on the system. So it's just
Dave, does he know
ironic, and
does he know that Donald Trump's goal was to eliminate Obamacare?
he doesn't. That's how, I can't say this word on the air, but it's unbelievably how stupid my brothers are. And they live out of state, so I don't feel bad about saying that.
Well, we stream, so let's hope they miss that.
Where was the incident?
Dave, thanks for the call.
Where was the incident right before the election that Trump is claiming he worked hard to save Obamacare? I mean, that was one of the biggest whoppers ever. What are these, 69 bills or something? 69 times he tried, or 59
And had it not
times
been
or
for the
something?
thumbs down from John McCain, he would have succeeded.
And by the way, one of the things that I think a lot of people are grateful for is the preventative care they get for free, and the fact that their children can stay on their health insurance till they're 26 and maybe have a job. That's up in the air now.
Supreme
The
Court.
Supreme Court could get rid of that, which would be...
Well, Supreme Court, as we discussed with Carl Rose, get rid of the whole damn thing, even though the whole thing is not before them.
Whole damn thing.
Their expansive approach to making decisions.
And I tell you, for people that are out of work and you don't have insurance from your company, it is a lifesaver to be able to get on Obamacare.
Hey, Jared. Jared Bowen is joining us.
Jared
now.
Bowen is joining us.
How are you, Jared?
Hi, Jared.
Good
Where's
to see
Jared?
you both again.
So do you have problems having relationships with people who are diametrically opposed to your world or political views?
Not at all, actually. I feel like I always go into journalism mode, and I want to learn everything I can if somebody has complete opposite spectrum beliefs and anything.
So you don't do what like Marjorie does when she said, I just bumped into somebody I disagree with, they're dead to me now. you don't?
No, I'm fascinated, actually.
I have to say, I wish I could live like you. I try every day, at least for 3 hours, but I admire your strength in being able to do it. What do you do? You told us, gave us a hint. What are you doing at 2 o'clock, which is exactly 4 minutes away?
Well, the hint I gave you was about Winteractive and the big pink floating men and the car with a satellite that's crashed onto its hood. We'll talk to the Boston Downtown Alliance about this public art installation to get us through these cold days of winter. We'll talk to Tara Celios. She is a photographer, an artist who creates these amazing tableaus, finding the beauty in the grotesque. By looking at bones and raw meat and insects. But she takes her cues from centuries of art history. They're really, really compelling. And then we'll speak with the pianist and composer Baron Ryan, who does many interesting things. He has many very great influences, including nursery rhymes and how he makes his own compositions out of things like I'm a Little Teapot. Fabulous.
We'll be listening, Jared Bowen. Now 3.5 minutes, no news, 3.5 minutes till the Culture Show with Jared Bowen. Jared, thank you.
Thank you, Jared. See you later. Okay, we are done. Thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to everybody who came down to the Boston Public Library.
Thank you all.
24/7 by way of our podcast or our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by NBC's Chuck Todd, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrew Cabral, the great environmentalist Bill McKibben. Can't wait to talk to him about the fires